In a room adorned with luxurious gold, two young people were drinking tea on opposite sides of a table. Without beating around the bush, the boy blurted out that his companion could never replace tea. This boy, Wilhelm Hunt, was the protagonist's fiancé and was supposed to join her family. The girl didn't quite understand what Wilhelm meant by all that. If the boy had told his fiancé this before the engagement, it would have been easier to break up. Wilhelm, confident he could give his fiancée everything she desired, was not planning to break up. The princess, shocked, couldn't understand how she could stoop so low. She was even more shocked to learn that Wilhelm would consent to her having a lover. It was a particularly reckless act on Wilhelm's part. In reality, everything was a game called His Men, set in a fantasy academy. The goal of the game is to choose and raise affection, a dating simulator with several heroes and endings. The problem is that Karina Pioneer, into whom the girl was reincarnated, is a side character. It was said she was prettier and richer than Taisha, but it wasn't so. The protagonist was beautiful like a fairy, and everyone loved her. Karina was a puppet that made Tati stand out. Until the original game ended, it was bearable. Karina lived peacefully, although the relationship was the main problem. Daniel, son of Duke Malfurion, was the first boy they intended to marry her to since the womb. He was a handsome and kind young man, with good manners, a main hero candidate. But as he grew up, Daniel couldn't marry her and chose Taisha as his fiancée. Taisha was Karina's friend and hoped it wouldn't affect their friendship. She chose the main hero, and the game ended. Karina assumed they wouldn't mention her anymore. But the next candidate to woo her was Raymond Carcel, master of the Magic Tower. The handsome Raymond was a hero candidate, and Karina thought that if Taisha chose Daniel, she could be with this boy. But Raymond also chose the heroine's friend. Afterward, the girl only associated with side characters and fell in love with the eldest son of a simple viscount. Throughout this time, Karina failed to settle into this world, and he was the only one who made her happy. Days, weeks, months passed, and another of the princess's boyfriends left with Taisha. In this world, not even high status, beautiful appearance, or skills could compare to the title of protagonist. Karina was starting to think her friend was deliberately seducing her boyfriends, but it turned out this one was from a normal family. Andrew Lovron Gloucester was the current emperor's half-brother and the only missing royal family member. Obviously, the protagonist would always be close to royal. Almost immediately after the breakup, Karina heard news about Taisha's wedding. And Andrew. The game ended 3 years ago. Taisha got married, and it seemed like they wouldn't mention her anymore and everything would be fine. But Karina stumbled on the same stone again. She approached Daniel and, with determination, poured a cup of tea over his head. The girl was no longer going to tolerate this treatment and promised he would pay for every word. The next day, a solemn event was held in the kingdom, with many guests from different social classes present. Karina also attended the celebration, but bitter from the conversation with her fiancé, she couldn't enjoy the atmosphere. She was stabbed in the back again. Everyone around her gossiped about the girl and her failed engagement, labeling her as obsessed with men. She didn't want to come either, but she had no choice as her father was abroad, and the presence of a pioneer representative was mandatory. Suddenly, behind Karina, a female voice rang out strongly. Taisha was calling her. She had heard Lord Wilhelm say they were married, and she joked inappropriately that she wouldn't steal her friend's fiancé. Society, obsessed with the lives of others, believed Karina and the Archduke were opposites, like light and shadow, and that he, unlike her, was an angel. Tatiana always acted like this, feigning innocence and ridiculing her friend, turning her into the unfortunate bridesmaid. Karina informed her that Wilhelm didn't care about her marriage, and that being Taisha's lover would be a great honor for him. Taisha, in turn, revealed that when meeting Wilhelm, they joked that there would be rumors of a romance between them, and that he didn't care about gossip. Karina, impressed, suggested that she too could meet with her husband alone. After all, they were best friends. The Duchess of Gloucester extended her hand, about to clear up the misunderstanding, but Karina abruptly pulled hers back, hitting her. A servant invited the representative of Pioneer to see the emperor, just in time. Because the girl was about to explode, the servants presented Archduke Pioneer to the emperor, announcing that, in his place, Princess Karina had arrived. The young woman greeted His Majesty, and upon looking up, she saw a young man for the first time. This guy is the Lord of Iron and Blood, author of the massacre of rebels and their families. A tyrant without a shred of humanity. The man seemed more harmless than she thought. Besides being incredibly handsome and Tayshia's first love in the game, he was worth it. Karina remained silent for a moment, and, following the emperor's question about her distraction, she said she was surprised by his extraordinary beauty. She was not afraid of him at all, although those who had heard of him trembled with fear. She had already been through something like this, and knew that meeting someone for herself was more important than judging them by rumors. If the rumors were true, Karina was a woman obsessed and disturbed by men. The emperor enjoyed talking with the young woman and told her so directly. Over a cup of tea, they chatted all night, and the boy was very impressed with the conversation. Finally, he decided to ask Karina if the spot beside him was still free, would she like to be his girlfriend? Karina was shocked by this unexpected proposal and replied that the emperor would find a much better partner than her. The young woman planned to return home right after the audience, but the man asked her not to flee, because there would be an important announcement before the end of the banquet. Karina returned to the celebration, and to her misfortune, she was spotted by Lord Wilhelm. He was talking to his fiancée as if nothing had happened. She reminded him that their relationship had broken up because of him, so he didn't need to give an account of her conversation with the emperor, much less talk to his fiancée. Karina publicly declared that she demanded a divorce, after he confessed that he wanted to become the lover of Duchess Gloucester, which caused a big stir. The boy became furious because his fiancée decided to embarrass him in public and lunged at her with all his strength. Karina closed her eyes, bracing for the blow, and was even planning how she would accuse her fiancé of all the misfortunes and destroy the Marquis onto family. Suddenly, as if appearing out of nowhere, Andrew emerged and stopped the aggressor's hand. If Wilhelm hit Karina even once, she would leave him penniless and humiliate him before all of society, embarrassing him to the point where he couldn't show his face in public, and finally destroying his family's reputation. But Andrew intervened in the conflict. The young woman thanked the Archduke, and without prolonging the conversation, hurried to leave. She downed her glass of wine quickly, reflecting on what had happened and the insignificance of her fiancé. Karina didn't understand where she had offended Tayshia. Wilhelm meant absolutely nothing to her, but if she started dating someone, her friend would undoubtedly interfere. The princess wondered if there was any man in the world who didn't like Tayshia. When she saw the emperor's reflection in her glass, their eyes met, and Karina blushed. The emperor had asked her to wait, not to get drunk, but it seemed something went wrong. The young woman thought the emperor was finally going to make an announcement, but there was actually none. If he hadn't tricked her, Karina would have left immediately. His Majesty asked the princess how he could compensate her for the wait, and Karina started refusing, when suddenly she saw Tayshia staring fixedly at them. The young woman assumed her friend was jealous that she was close to her first love, and she asked the emperor to come closer to her. He perfectly understood what was happening and did not refuse. Tayshia left, and the young woman thanked the emperor for playing along. Karina suddenly thought that he might be different from other men. The girl noticed he was very handsome, especially when he smiled. She told him they should maybe start a relationship, but stopped herself. The emperor might think she was crazy, since she had unintentionally rejected him, and now she was offering to date him. However, the boy was glad the princess changed her mind. If they started a relationship, he could marry her someday, and he would strive to be the best man for her. Karina woke up in her bed, remembering the previous night and assuming it had all been a dream. Seeing the countless gifts sent by the emperor, the girl finally realized what had happened was real. Furthermore, the emperor sent her a letter inviting her to the palace, stating that he hoped the girl's opinion hadn't changed overnight. Karina got scared. If she said she had changed her mind, the emperor might get angry, and the rumors around her would spread again, this time on a larger scale. And most importantly, Archduchess Tayshia would laugh at her. Because the protagonist was her, not the princess, Karina's thoughts were interrupted by the servants showing off the emperor's gifts. A Florian fabric that Duchess Gloucester couldn't obtain, a perfume that only members of the imperial family could buy, and other things the princess finally liked. Zhao, Lily, Karina's personal maid, was the one most happy for the princess. It was obvious His Majesty had really liked the girl. Banging the doors open, the girl's father appeared in the doorway of the Pioneer Palace. A totally unexpected return. In an imperative tone, he ordered his daughter to go to his office immediately. The seal on the gifts was from the imperial family, and Archduke Pioneer reprimanded Karina for accepting gifts from the emperor. Being a married woman, the young woman confessed to her father that she planned to divorce Hunt, and the Archduke erupted in even greater fury, thinking his daughter wouldn't make such a decision without weighty reasons, and that perhaps Archduchess Tatia was involved. The father calmed down a bit. Unfortunately, it didn't last long, as the young woman revealed that Lord Wilhelm planned to become the Archduchess's lover. And the man exploded again, slamming the table in anger. He admitted that maybe it was all his fault, and promised that Marquis Hunt would shower her with gifts from head to toe. So if she wanted any compensation, she should say so. Karina wished for Wilhelm's island. The area was abandoned now, but using the salt from those islands, the family could open a perfume factory. Before her reincarnation, she loved that game. She had seen the endings of all the main characters, and the one she liked most was the ending with Wilhelm. The Sabin Island, which belonged to him, was in an unexplored location, and from the sea salts bathing it, any scent could be created, besides using them in bath products. The heroes launched bath scents, their star product called Tatia's scent, and so Wilhelm amassed wealth and power. But his rise came to an abrupt halt when Tatia chose another. Hunt. Their wings had to be clipped at the root. A successful business on seized land would be agony for Wilhelm. The pioneer family was swimming in money, so her father allowed her to do whatever she pleased, even sighing over the emperor. To cheer her up, Karina showed Lily her father's gift, a blank check where she could write any amount she wanted. With no friends, she suggested to her maid that they go shopping to find the perfect outfit for her date with the emperor. Lily happily agreed to help Karina. Karina avoided going out due to the judgment of others and the fear of running into her ex. But now the stairs just slid off her. Suddenly, a man blocked their path in the middle of the street. It was Raymond Carcel, Karina's second ex-boyfriend. She demanded he move aside, but Raymond also planned to visit that place. He never imagined he liked women's haute couture boutiques. A fanatic of Tatia, he was looking for a gift for her, and didn't hesitate to blurt out that such clothes weren't worthy of Karina. Lily interrupted the conversation, indignant that the young man was speaking to the princess like that. But Karin convinced her that he wasn't worthy of her attention. At the boutique, Manager Fury greeted the young women. His Majesty had sent a message to every renowned store on the street, asking them to find something special for the princess. The Emperor ordered them to check Karin's previous purchases at the boutique to choose a gift according to her tastes. She loved the gesture, although she found it excessive. The princess had said those words while drunk, and he cared so much. Karin even felt ashamed. Lily fluttered around excitedly, looking for the perfect outfit, and finally decided on one. While convincing Karin that the Emperor was in love, Lily stopped mid-sentence. And not just her, everything stopped. Raymond appeared in the room. He was the only one who used time magic so shamelessly. Raymond, after 6 months of relationship, dared to believe he knew Karin better than she knew herself. She retorted that he was a pathetic failure chasing a married woman, giving all the money from the magic tower to Taddy. Raymond became enraged and, using his magic, forced her to freeze and ordered her to kneel and beg for forgiveness. Karin burst into fury. If he used more magic, other mages would arrest him instantly, and she made that very clear to her ex. The boy noticed that Karina had changed a lot and vanished into space. Time resumed its normal flow, and the girl went to try on outfits. After lunch, a carriage arrived at the palace to pick up Karina. After the journey, the girl got out of the carriage and was surprised. It wasn't the Emperor's private palace, as he wanted the meeting in a significant place. The place was the Winter Palace, where Aster lived when he was a prince. The territory was private, so the only woman who had been there was the Empress. The Emperor was treating Karina too well. It was a disaster. The girl couldn't tell him she had made a mistake while drunk. The boy met her in the street, and from the shock, Karina pressed herself against a column. The Emperor extended his hand, and the girl gave him hers. Aster was a little lost, as this date was the first for him. Aster didn't know Karina's preferences, so he prepared a table with different sweets. The girl wasn't enthusiastic about sweets, but she wanted to try everything. The Emperor poured his favorite bitter tea into the cups, neutralizing the sweetness, reminding the girl of the incident with the alcoholic drink. He understood that Karina worried about family reputation and such things, but he hoped she hadn't changed her mind about their relationship. In this world where the protagonist decides everything, Aster turned out to be the biggest victim. Because the beloved Tatiana got married, imperial power focused entirely on him. Aster was emperor, but without influence, so, to keep his title, he decided to annihilate all the rebel aristocrats. After this, the people nicknamed him the Emperor, who sits on the throne of blood. He is a very well-known figure throughout the state, and marrying the daughter of Archduke Pioneer would help protect his image. Even though Karina was drunk and made a mistake, the Emperor was very kind to her. The girl didn't understand what he really wanted. Aster said he truly wished to be with her. If Karina sides with him, Archduke Pioneer could be his ally, and he would help the girl get revenge on Taddy. So the proposal was really good. The Emperor knew what was going on between the friends. He thought Karina was too good because she maintained the friendship with the Archduchess even after what she did. But that day, her eyes were full of a desire for revenge, and the boy noticed it. The girl didn't want to cause Aster problems, but he swore by his title as spiritual emperor. And politically, he would always be on her side, and he wants her to use his help. In that case, Karina promised she would do everything possible to become his beloved. Before sleeping, talking to Lily, the princess noticed they had much in common with the emperor, and the maid completely approved of the girl's choice. At that moment, Lily was cleaning the room and found the bracelet Karina had since she was 10 years old. The young woman looked at the jewel and remembered her first dark story. The protagonist of her dark story was Daniel, who traded her for Tati. Since childhood, he was her fiancé, and one day he gave them identical bracelets under the guise of friendship. Even as a child, Karina felt that Daniel liked Tasha. At that time, the original story was still ongoing, and that bothered her a lot. The bracelet in the girl's hands glittered strangely, but she thought it was an illusion. Lily assumed the bracelet was cursed and asked the princess to give it to her to burn. Karina decided to keep the jewel just in case and placed it on the nightstand. Marquis Hunt was furious with his son. He crumpled the paper and headed resolutely towards him. Despite Wilhelm's excuses, the father knew that the Archduchess was his son's first love. The boy tried to prove, once again, that there had been a misunderstanding with his fiancée, and his father delivered a resounding slap. Enmity with the Pioneer family would bring problems to the Hontams, so, after forcing Wilhelm to apologize, he kicked him out. The boy had a strange relationship with Tasha for a long time. More than friends, but less than lovers. Obviously, it was unrequited love, and if he let her go, everything would end. Forever. That's why, after Tasha's wedding, Wilhelm tried to forget everything. But it was impossible. His parents introduced him to a young woman, and Wilhelm married for his family and for success. But the wedding passed, and they never saw each other, until Tasha contacted the boy after the engagement. They met again after a long time, and she was just as beautiful. Tasha said that if Wilhelm got married, they could see each other more. Wilhelm thought Tisha wanted him to be her lover, but his relationship with Karina worsened, and the girl stopped talking to him. Anyway, the boy decided he would not allow the divorce. At any cost, Karina and Lily sniffed various scents, as the princess wanted her own business. Enough with men and marriages. Better work and distraction. The girl thanked the emperor for his support, but she still didn't fully trust him. Once again, Karina was gossip fodder. That she chases the emperor, that she is dating two at once. What an outrage. Lily begged her not to pay attention. They were just envious, nothing more. Karina, impassive, feigned ignorance and turned a deaf ear. After thinking about it for a moment, the princess decisively approached the girls. She let them know she had heard every word and told them the truth so they would spread the correct rumors. The friends apologized and, embarrassed, hurried to leave. Karina suggested to her to visit the Nivea store. It was popular lately, and in fact, it would be a good place for her business. Tasha and Daniel approached her. The Archduchess did not expect to find her old friend in such a place. An awkward silence reigned. Daniel, somewhat flustered, asked the princess to return the greeting. Karina ordered the maid to wait a moment and not let anyone into the room. Lily prepared a tray. If Duke Malfurion or Duchess Gloucester pressured the young woman, the maid would be ready. Tasha asked her friend if the rumors that she had reached the emperor were true, but Karina found it laughable that she asked about Aster. The princess said Tati felt strange, only because she couldn't snatch the man from her friend. The Archduchess tried to excuse herself, saying she was only worried her friend would misunderstand her with Will. But the young woman did not give in. She believed that if a married woman appeared with another man, she would be branded a libertine. Karina noticed Daniel Malfurion. Since he and Tasha were friends since childhood, the boy kept hovering around her like a puppy even after her wedding. The first person who betrayed the princess and left a wound in her heart, the young woman asked Tasha to stop meddling in her relationship with Aster. and she apologized for calling him by his first name, explaining that she called him that in private, and it had become a habit, although it was a lie. Finally, since the conversation had reached this point, Karina decided to speak clearly. She didn't consider those people her friends, as they had done nothing when dirty rumors circulated about her. Despite Karina's deep resentment, Tasha decided they were still friends, and proposed making peace. The word friends unleashed a storm of emotions in the princess, and with decisive force, she rejected Tati's outstretched hand, unintentionally breaking her bracelet. The Archduchess, panicked, hurriedly collected the beads scattered on the floor. Daniel promised to buy her a new bracelet, but that option did not convince her at all. Tasha only wanted that one. Saying this was too much, Tasha ran out of the room hysterically. When Daniel went after the girl, Lily entered the room with a tray in her hands. Burning with rage, the maid had been listening to the whole conversation, barely restraining herself from hitting the guests with the crockery. Everything happening between those two was a complete disgrace. Karina was glad she hadn't ended up marrying Daniel in the end. A strange sound caught the girl's attention. On the floor, she noticed and picked up a bead that had fallen from Tati's broken bracelet. While the object was in Karina's hands, a sympathy level with a value of 64% appeared above Daniel's head, and it kept growing over time. It was exactly the same interface as in the original game. Tasha immediately approached the girl and grabbed her hand. Lily still held the ready tray, but Karina asked her to leave them and not let anyone pass. Tati tried to snatch the bead from the princess, but she only mocked her, pulling her hand away. It was Karina's turn to take things from the girl. In reality, she wasn't going to take anything, so in the end, she returned the item to its owner. She didn't need what belonged to others, unlike Tati. The Archduchess was worried that her friend had seen everything and asked the girl about it. The princess pretended not to understand what Tati was talking about, but in the end, she revealed her cards. She was interested in knowing how the girl seduced her exes with the bracelet. Each of her engagements broke because of Tati, and for the girl, it was just a game. All this time she acted so vilely, and now she dares to be jealous of Aster. However, besides that, the Archduchess also declared that the Emperor was special, and her feelings for him too. At the door, Karina noticed Daniel. He seemed to be eavesdropping, and that was an excellent reason for provocation. The princess told Tati that all her men would one day get married, become other women's husbands, and forget about her. But the girl didn't believe so. Aloud, she declared that all those boys belonged to her from the beginning, and she wouldn't allow anyone to take them away. Of course, Daniel heard all that. Disappointed by his beloved's words, he could only utter her name and nothing else. A tear rolled down the boy's cheek, and without waiting for Tati, he left the room. Today she would return home alone. Karina assured the Archduchess that, with time, everyone would see her true colors. But despite her defeat, she still believed herself special, unlike the princess. Pioneer suggested she smile as always, as she didn't have long left to be happy. The rivals would face off at the festival. Karina was not only furious with Tatilla and the men who betrayed her, but she was also worried that the problem was her. She imagined knocking Tati out, as she wasn't the only one with that bracelet. Apparently, the jewel looked normal. There was a possibility that Karina's bracelet had no power. Perhaps the game's objective was just to increase the sympathy level, but despite her efforts, she failed to seduce Aster. The girl was writing something with a pen on a piece of paper, thinking that Tati would soon be in her place. Karina felt somewhat vulgar in her outfit, but Lily reassured her. It was perfect for teaching that horrible lady a lesson. There is no empress in the country, and the first slow dance was always danced by the archducal couple, so all the attention usually went to Tatilla. Karina always avoided these events, as she didn't want to see her. But now everything was different. The bracelet on the girl's wrist looked childish, but it was an opportunity to know if it had powers. At the festival, Aster was bored among high society, thinking of the princess, and waiting for her arrival. Duke Malfurion greeted the emperor. He seemed somewhat annoyed, and Aster thought someone so transparent shouldn't be a politician. The man asked the duke what relationship he had with Karina, and he replied that they were childhood friends. But he remembered that she was dating the emperor, and clarified that they were nothing more than friends. Seeing Daniel clinging to the Archduchess like a friend, Aster wondered what that word meant to the boy. Daniel thought it must be hard for Karina, and he hadn't worried about her. The emperor asked him to be more careful, as he wasn't as good as the princess. Suddenly, a female voice resonated near the boys. As always, Taisha appeared near the men. While the girl was talking to the emperor, Daniel noticed she had fixed the bracelet. And it looked fake. It was still a mystery to the Duke what happened that day. After what happened, Tisha felt disgusted every time she saw him. The girl told Aster that, what a coincidence, it was her birthday, expecting congratulations from the boy. He congratulated her, but noticed that her husband, apparently, ignored her quite a bit. Looking at the emperor with puppy eyes, Tatilla asked for their first dance as a gift. How audacious. Aster couldn't articulate a word when Andrew Gloucester entered the scene, scolding his wife. The Archduke apologized to the emperor for his wife's clumsiness, although in reality, he didn't need to apologize. Finally, Aster demanded that Tati stop involving him in her, let's say, romantic entanglements. Karina heard a noise. Wilhelm was running at full speed, desperate to talk to her, but the butler blocked his way. Duke Andrew had ordered him to throw Wilhelm out if he dared to show up. Clearly, emotional control is not his strong suit. He clenched his fist and threatened the servant. Karina, worried about the butler, and knowing that the conversation was inevitable, asked him to withdraw. The girl decided to test the bracelet. As expected, the sympathy level hovered near zero. Karina thought their conversation had ended at the previous banquet and didn't understand what else the boy wanted. The numbers on Wilhelm's sympathy meter kept dropping nonstop. She reminded him that he had lost his mind and was willing to use violence. The Lord, restraining his anger, apologized and admitted his mistake. Since it seemed like a sincere repentance, Karina accepted the apologies, but still asked him to leave. She couldn't lose him under any circumstances, so Wilhelm grabbed her hand and tried to convince her to stop the divorce. It would be the fourth. Who would want to marry her afterwards? But Karina remained unmoved. She didn't even accept him accompanying her one last time, knowing he was doing all this because Tatilla found out about the divorce, and she didn't want to see him anymore. Wilhelm saw a bracelet on Karina's hand, identical to Tatilla's, and thought she wanted to look like her so he would change his feelings. The guy was crossing the line, and the butler threatened to call the guard if he disrespected the princess again. Wilhelm's sympathy began to rise. It seems he really thought Karina was imitating Tatilla to influence him. Karina thought about wearing the bracelet to the banquet to check the emperor's sympathy level. With it, she could say anything to increase it. The princess's bracelet also had power, but she preferred not to use it and asked Lily to keep it in her room. Upon entering the hall, Karina felt a strange atmosphere. Daniel was dejected, and Taisha and Andrew seemed to have argued recently. As always, only the emperor radiated happiness, greeting the girl. That's what it feels like when someone is genuinely happy to see you. The princess asked Aster why he was so happy, and leaning closer, he whispered something in her ear. The emperor greeted everyone present at the festival, hoping the guests would forget about the hard work and rest comfortably that day. Karina could only think about Taisha. Maybe she also came from another world, but if she knew the original plot, she wouldn't be obsessed with Aster, who isn't special. Thinking about it, Karina always saw Taisha as the game's heroine, but she never tried to get to know her better. The emperor interrupted Karina's thoughts, inviting her to dance the first dance together. They formed a couple, almost a single unit. Aster asked her what she was thinking about, and upon hearing the answer, asked her to focus on him. He was very jealous and only asked her to enjoy their dance, after which the couple spun embraced. Tatilla watched them from afar, and all she could do was nervously bite her nails. This time, the guests were talking about the princess again, but commenting on how perfect the couple was. Like a fairy tale, the girl, for the first time, was happy about the murmurs, so much so that she almost cried. Archduke Pioneer informed his daughter that he would be at his post that day and asked her to come see him. But he wasn't there. Upon learning from the emperor that the owner of the magic tower, Karina's mother, was at the banquet, the girl got truly scared and rushed to find her before something bad happened. In the hall, she found her mother grabbing Tatilla by the hair, yelling at her for stealing her daughter's fiancé. Andrew tried to mediate, but also received the fury of the mage. The woman shouted that the boy was pathetic if his wife was chasing after other men. Seeing Karina, the mother immediately changed. Her frown turned into a cheerful smile, and she let go of the archduchess's hair. The girl grabbed her arm and pulled her aside to avoid causing a bigger conflict. The mother told the princess that she would stay that night at the palace with her father. The archduke tried to escape, but he will have to face the woman at home. The emperor joined the girls and greeted the owner of the magic tower. The woman inspected the boy from head to toe. His face wasn't bad, and his physique was worthy. Perhaps the emperor was even normal. He understood that her mother worried about Karina, but assured her she didn't have to worry, because he was a good guy and really liked the princess. The mage wished her daughter a good date and sent her a flying kiss. Karina felt incredibly awkward, as her mother was a special person. To Aster, the girl's mother turned out to be very interesting. He thought the princess resembled the archduke, but she resembled him even more. Finally, the couple was alone. The emperor had only been waiting for this moment. In the rest area, Tasha was sobbing in her usual manner. Her husband was by her side, and Daniel was sitting on the opposite sofa. She was furious because her friend didn't help her when she asked the emperor to dance with her. Titi claimed that the boy didn't care about her or her unhappiness. The archduke asked Daniel to leave, and he left without hesitation, but thinking that Tasha was acting crazy. When the spouses were left alone, the girl asked if Andrew was angry with her, but the boy didn't care that his wife wanted to dance with another man. At that moment, Titi noticed something was wrong with the bracelet, as lately she saw the sympathy level very blurry. The archduke asked his wife to remember two things. If she didn't keep her promise, she would lose everything, and if she wanted to live, she must be responsible for her words. After concluding his speech, Andrew left the room in silence. Tatilla was glad that Karina thought the bracelet only showed the affinity window. If she had touched anything else, she would be in trouble. But although the Archduchess returned the accessory to its original state, it no longer worked the same. Suddenly, Ray appeared in front of the girl, and she fell into his arms. To the boy's question of whether someone had bothered her, Tatilla replied no. But Raymond didn't believe her. The girl's eyes were red, like a rabbit's. In reality, the Archduchess was worried about something. She asked the boy to fulfill her request concerning Karina. Finally, the emperor and the princess arrived at the gates of the winter garden. Inside, it was even more beautiful than outside. It was cool in the garden, and Aster covered Karina's shoulders with his cape. The empress was a winter mage, and her father built this garden so that, even in the cold, she could enjoy beautiful flowers. Karina thought the emperor was a romantic, because Aster was born as a summer mage, and his energy was different from his mother's. She became very weak. Then the poisoning incident occurred. The poison shouldn't have affected her at all, but for a weakened body, it was a tremendous blow. The woman gave birth to her son and died in less than a year. In every encounter, the father got furious with the child, blaming him for his mother's death, and Karina already knew the rest of the story. Due to his father's contempt, Aster's position as emperor weakened considerably. So, to strengthen his power, he had to kill all his siblings and anyone who stood in his way. The girl was furious at the injustice. A 1-year-old baby couldn't do that. The culprit was whoever put the poison. The emperor shouldn't blame the child. Aster was very pleased that she supported him. She took his hand, noticing it was very cold, to which the emperor replied that people with cold hands have fiery hearts. Suddenly, she thought that sincerity is a wonderful thing, because classy people are able to recognize it. The boys' and girls' faces came dangerously close. It seemed the crucial moment was about to happen, but someone started calling Karina insistently. Apparently, Duke Malfurion was fervently looking for her. Although the emperor was jealous, he trusted her and let her go. Upon meeting Daniel, Karina asked him why he was looking for her, considering that he only ever needed to tea. The emperor decided this conversation was not for his ears and stepped away, giving the former friends a chance to talk alone. Daniel suddenly blurted out that Tasha had become strange. Karina, obviously disappointed that the boy was only looking for her for that reason, replied that the girl had always been strange. But their relationship was strange too, with the Duke chasing after a married woman and calling her by her first name. They claimed to be friends with Karina, but he was always on Tasha's side. Now that Daniel thought about it, he apologized and admitted how short-sighted he had been. This time, the princess was pleasantly surprised and accepted her friend's apologies. Daniel felt as if a spell was broken. Since Karina and Titi fought, he had the feeling that a crack had appeared in his heart. It seemed to him that Tasha was a fragile girl who had to be protected with all strength. But after that day, she seemed so fake that the mere thought of her sickened him. Karina clearly did not expect to hear such things about Tasha from the boy, but he insisted that the girl was not the one he knew before. Recently, she yelled at him for not helping her convince the emperor to dance with her. Right in front of the archduke, her husband, determined to find out something more, Karina asked Daniel if the seller of the bracelets he had gifted them was a mage. He didn't remember for sure, so he suggested to the girl that she ask her mother. Afterward, Karina said goodbye to the boy, advising him as an old friend to reconsider his attitude towards Tasha to get rid of many problems. After finding out from the butler that her mother had stayed in her room, not in the hall, Karina went to meet her, thinking that perhaps her parents still felt something for each other. After her breakup with Daniel, they divorced, not only due to the cooling of their feelings, but also because she chose magic and he chose his family. They were so absorbed in their lives that they forgot, and the breakup of Karina and Daniel was the last straw. The girl knocked on her mother's door, and after waiting a few minutes, she saw the woman. Panting on the threshold, the princess asked her to tell her something about the bracelet, and her mother asked her where she got it from. Karina got truly scared and asked if the ornament had dangerous magic, but a simple glance was not enough to know. And the woman invited the princess into the room. Mrs. Pioner served tea to her daughter and asked her to wait a moment. Karina hadn't been in her mother's room for a long time. Before it was always locked, but nothing had changed. Her father obviously took care of it. Mom suggested that Daniel had given that bracelet to the girl and squeezed it tightly in her hand. Bracelets are an excellent base for a magical artifact, and in this one, top-quality seasonal magic stones were mixed. If magic stones simply store magic, seasonal ones release it. They are devilishly hard to obtain, and little is known about them. The person who created this bracelet is either a genius or a madman. Mom put the jewel in the box to take it to the tower and examine it thoroughly. Soon she asked her daughter how she started dating the emperor, and without going into detail, the girl replied that it was a very long and unexpected story. The woman pointed out that her daughter had always been a cautious girl and ordered her to act as her heart dictated. Anyway, she could have fun for once. When talking about men, Mom couldn't help but mention Wilhelm too. Karina replied that she had sent the divorce request and everything should be over by now. But the boy was behaving strangely, and they hadn't responded to the request yet. The attention of the girls was drawn by a noise. A confused mother said it was a cockroach she couldn't catch. On the table, Karina noticed blue antennae and lifted the cup with all her strength to kill the insect. It turned out that all this time, the father had been hiding under the table, and the blue antennae were strands of his hair. When his daughter screamed, the man almost burst out laughing. He hid well, but when he heard Wilhelm's name, he couldn't hold back. Karina still couldn't understand what the man was doing in her mother's room. Now there was nothing to worry about. The parents took charge of Karina's problems with her fiancé and promised to sort everything out. The Marquises of Antha tried to receive Karina's parents with all kindness, without giving any sign that something was wrong. The Pioner family had sent Wilhelm's divorce request a long time ago and received no reply. Wilhelm's father declared it was a misunderstanding and that his son had sincerely apologized to the fiancé. They called Wilhelm into the room to hear his excuses. He greeted the guests and began to listen to the tough interrogation. His father wanted to convince the Pioners that his son had sincerely apologized to his fiancée. That day, the servants blocked his way, and the princess did not want to talk. The boy got angry, but that's true love, acting without hesitation for love, for Tasha's love. To be with her, Wilhelm thought. He said he had apologized, but the princess wanted the divorce. The boy admitted his mistake and regretted it. Regarding his words about wanting to be the Archduchess's lover, the boy said there was a misunderstanding, and that he didn't utter it. Madame Pioneer was not called the mistress of the magic tower for nothing, so she took the initiative to go to his mansion to find out the truth. Magic would create memories of that day, and she would know who was telling the truth. Using teleportation, the woman moved everyone to her palace. Then Karin asked if Wilhelm would swear by his title and knightly honor. Antha's parents were very worried, but were relieved thinking their son wouldn't lie. The boy agreed, and Mrs. Pioner began the memory immersion. The woman warned that they might get a little dizzy. Everyone present saw what happened the day the boy was supposed to apologize to his fiancée, and Wilhelm's deception failed miserably. The boy decided to stand firm until the end and declared that he remembered nothing of that. Karina's mother was furious, as her magic could not lie under any circumstances. The butler interceded for the Pioneer family, whom he served, as everything the observers were witnessing, the servants had seen and heard with their own eyes and ears. Probably Wilhelm, who had sworn by his rank and knightly honor, wasn't happy to see himself from the outside. Now, definitely, no one had any doubt who was to blame for the divorce. Thanks to Will's action, the girl obtained a sea of soap and was now only looking for a good perfumer. Mom sent Karina here, but from the outside, this dreadful place didn't look like a perfume boutique at all. At the door, the princess was greeted by a woman. She wasn't sure if the girl would find what she was looking for, but she was willing to show her the scents. Despite the small selection, the girl finally settled on a vial and asked to smell precisely that scent. At first it was a bit strong, but after only a few moments, Karina found herself in a field covered in morning dew. The grass swayed gently at her feet, and a delicate floral scent enveloped her. After confirming that Nivea was the owner of the perfumery, the girl proposed a partnership. But the woman's reaction was completely unexpected. She screamed that she wouldn't work with her, because the Archduchess had also sent her. Karina was indignant at such a statement. She recounted the rumor that many knew. Tasha had taken 4 fiancés from one girl, and the princess was that very girl. It would be strange for her to be Tasha's errand girl. Nivea regretted her haste and decided that perhaps she could trust the Frey family. But Karina was very curious about the woman's reaction. Nivea related that the Archduchess had come to see her and proposed collaboration. She wanted to create her own perfume brand and delegate all management to a partner. However, the woman found a murky point in the contract. A clause indicated that all created recipes would become the property of the Archduchess. Nivea left her boutique to her daughter, who followed in her footsteps and also became a perfumer. But when she brought up the issue of property rights and succession in management, Tasha suddenly became furious. The Archduchess became enraged by the woman's disobedience and even threatened to ruin her. Shortly after, Nivea lost customers, and people on the street didn't even want to talk to her anymore, as if she had committed some crime. Nivea was very tired. No matter how hard the perfumer tried, everything was useless, so she planned to leave there. Karina knew that situation very well. She never crossed paths with Tasha, but dirty rumors circulated about her. Then, Astor appeared in her life like a savior. The boy blindly believed her words and was the first to offer to help her take revenge. Now it was Karina's turn to lend a hand. The princess decided to give the woman a chance and asked her to allow her to help. Together, they could restore the business and make it prosper. Nivea doubted the princess's capabilities, since Tasha was an archduchess and held some power. Karina decided to show the woman in front of her someone who wasn't afraid of Tasha. She told her she was dating the emperor and that she might soon be empress. Then, her authority would be much greater than Tasha's. She didn't rush Anavia to choose. She told her that, if the perfumer decided, she should go to Duke Pioneer's house. When Tasha took everything from Karina, sinking her to the depths, the girl dreamed of someone saying such words to her. During tea, the girl and her mother discussed Tasha. After all, she had the audacity to walk around with her nose in the air. Freya returned her bracelet to her daughter. Even in the magic tower, they couldn't figure out where it came from. The object was a perfect magic repository. Mrs. Pioner put her magic into the ornament and ordered the girl to do what she had always taught her. This way Karina would always be safe. The woman said that Tatilla would try to harm her daughter, but she couldn't always protect her, so she had to be careful. And Karina hugged her mother with all her love. Days after her mother's departure, the princess was preparing for a picnic with the emperor, and her outfit was magnificent, so mature, elegant, but terribly cute at the same time. Lily was extremely happy that everything was falling into place in Karina's life. As support and pillar, she was always by her side, experiencing what the girl was going through. After knocking on the princess's door, a servant announced that a person named Lella was looking for her, and that it was urgent. Lella was Nivea's daughter. The girl recounted that the store had suddenly caught fire, and her mother ordered her to inform the princess. And she came back, but the fire still hadn't gone out. A book of aroma recipes remained there, and the woman went to fetch it. The fire won't go out, and water doesn't help at all. If the fire cannot be extinguished with water, it means it is not normal, but probably magical. And then a more potent help is needed. Karina sent Lily to the Mages Association to send capable people to the fire scene. And she, along with Lella, immediately prepared to go to the burning premises. Time was catastrophically short, and the princess mounted a horse, instructing the girl to follow her by carriage. Karina promised she would save Nivea and set off. She arrived at the fire scene and was horrified. The flames were still very strong, and people couldn't control them. As the girl suspected, the fire was magical, which meant only another magic could extinguish it. It would take Lily a long time to bring mages, but a little longer, and Nivea wouldn't be alive. Karina snatched a bucket of water from a servant's hands and drenched her entire body. From head to toe, the girl declared that the fire was created by magic, so everyone should wait for the mages, while she, daughter of the archmage Freya, would take care of saving the boutique owner. Mom taught Karina magic once. One of the lessons was to create the shape she desired. Freya thought her daughter was doing well, without being a mage, and she did all this so the princess could protect herself from the magical force directed at her. Mom's bracelet gave her strength and confidence. She just needed to imagine the right shape. Karina created a protective water bubble around herself. Now the flames didn't scare her. Finishing, she immediately ran to rescue Nivea. In the middle of the fire, the woman was sitting on the floor, holding a recipe book in her hands. She had hurt her leg and couldn't walk, so she asked Karina to give the book to Lil and tell her that her mom loved her very much. There was a lot of smoke in the room, and the woman lost consciousness. The princess couldn't leave it like that. She was going to leave there only with Nivea. Concentrating, Karina created a stronger shield, a large dome full of pure air. After inhaling some oxygen, Nivea woke up and regained consciousness. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Raymond appeared. He had probably been observing the tragic situation the whole time. Since Tasha had no magic, Karina thought the boy had caused the fire. But Raymond claimed he had come to rescue the woman. The princess used the bracelet, hoping it would help somehow, but the jewel only allowed her to see the sympathy level. Raymond was not a hero, and he had only done something for free for Tati in his life, so he proposed a deal to Karina. She gave him the recipe book, and he, in return, would get both of them out of there. Karina was furious at those words, and the girl replied that she didn't need his help. Raymond held the princess's hand, making her see that magic was not that easy, and escaping with her would be impossible. Another ability of the bracelet appeared before the girl. Selection window. Confused, she didn't select any option, and the choice was made by itself. Karina remained silent, and the boy's sympathy level increased a little. He remained firm and waited for the princess to give him the book. The girl said there was no other option, and Raymond thought she had finally come to her senses, and she would cooperate with him. However, Karina simply told her former beloved where to go. On the verge of fainting, the girl still resisted. She simply couldn't act any other way. Since the princess didn't hand over the book, he decided to take it himself. Suddenly, someone appeared behind Raymond, and upon sensing the presence of a stranger, the boy tensed up a little. As soon as he turned to see the unknown person, the latter knocked him unconscious. Karina managed to half open her eyes to see what was happening. It seemed the emperor had come to rescue her. The princess woke up in her bed, her throat terribly dry, and asked Lily to serve her a glass of water. It turned out her parents were in the room, very worried, so much so that Freya was showing her fingers for her to say how many she saw. They were truly scared and relieved that Karina woke up. The family gathered in an emotional hug. Her mother scolded her for being reckless and sleeping for 5 days, but Nivea told everything, thanking Karina for saving her friend. The girl asked about Nivea. The woman was fine, recovering in the hospital, and had woken up even before Karina. The princess revealed that they saw Raymond at the fire, and that he could be the culprit. But Freya contradicted her. He was registered at the magic tower, and they would know immediately. Whoever did it was incredibly cautious, blocking magic and making memory recovery impossible. Her father also investigated. Fortunately, he had no idea for sure, so the reconstruction would not be a problem, and Karina could concentrate on recovering. A pile of letters from the emperor awaited her. Astor promised to write to her every day until she replied. A couple of days passed. Karina had almost recovered and exchanged daily letters with the emperor, despite being busy calculating the defense budget. The girl was reading another letter when the butler entered her room with the news that Mrs. Nivea had arrived for a visit at the palace. The woman was grateful to Karina for saving her life, but still made the decision to refuse the cooperation offer. That day she inhaled too much smoke and stopped smelling scents. In the hospital, they said the chances of recovery were minimal, and the woman could no longer consider herself a perfumer. Karina thought Nivea had been through too much to give up so easily. Despite the difficulties, for the recipe book, she risked her own life, and her experience of so many years hadn't vanished either. The girl urged the perfumer to fight until the end. The woman liked that the princess tried so hard for her and agreed to follow the girl. But with one condition. Nivea wanted Lela to be the main perfumer. Despite her youth, she was not only talented but a genius. Karina agreed and moved on to discuss the details. This summer, her family had to organize a masked ball, held annually since the time of the first duke. Even before its start, the ball becomes the most exciting topic of discussion, so it was an excellent opportunity to promote their product, especially considering that aristocrats are very delicate about personal care. The only drawback was that there was only 1 week left until the masked ball, and the schedule would be tight. But that didn't scare Nivea at all. Karina asked Lily to prepare the carriage to leave, although she hadn't fully recovered yet. To catch the tiger, you have to enter its lair, and she was going to do that. Declare war on her. On the way, the princess thought about how unfair the world was, that it only existed for Tasha, and revolved around her. She thought so until now, and yet she almost died recently. She and Nivea were not mere puppets of Tasha. In Duke Gloucester's palace, Karina drank tea, awaiting the Archduchess's arrival. Tasha wasn't expecting her friend. Of course, she heard the terrible news and said she worried about her. Karina told her that the store owner lost her sense of smell, and that truly bothered her. Titi didn't understand why the princess was telling her this. Despite the excuses, she knew who caused the fire. She came to remind her that she ruined a life. Karina was already leaving when Tasha screamed that she had nothing to do with it. She was accusing her. She claimed the princess was to blame for trying to take away what Titi couldn't have. The Archduchess, furious, pushed her friend and accused Karina of envy, of wanting everything she desired. Tasha spat that everything that shone in the princess's hands was pure garbage that didn't interest her at all. The Archduchess insinuated that Aster was like everyone else, and Karina delivered a slap with all her might. Tasha was stunned, but enraged she tried to hit her, although the princess stopped her hand effortlessly. Karina's earrings were magical artifacts, and she recorded every word that came out of her rival. Tasha said she was mean, but in that situation, she was the least qualified to talk about it. The princess made it clear to her that the world would no longer be so kind to her, and left. Upon leaving with the servants, Karina revealed the reason for the dispute, embarrassing Tasha. Tasha was about to explode at the princess, but remembering the recording, she kept silent. The princess was determined to make her ex-friend pay dearly for her ruined life, and for Nivea's life. On the street, the Archduke stopped her. He probably wanted to chat, but Karina was in no mood to talk to her ex. Andrew grabbed her hand, and she instantly begged him to let go. The Gloucesters deserved each other, flirting even after being married. The Archduke asked Karina for a couple of minutes, but she advised him to send a formal request to the Duke's mansion, and she hurried to leave. Before, a single look from him made her cry, but time really heals everything. The maid offered the Archduchess tea, but Tasha asked to be left alone. Hearing the whispers, the young woman approached the door to understand what they were talking about, and she understood that the servants were discussing rumors about her. Tasha had a bad habit. Every time the Archduchess got nervous, she bit her nails and the surrounding skin. When she was 19, everything was very different. Even then, with the help of a bracelet, she increased the sympathy of the boys around her. Everyone admired Titi's care and kindness, and they considered Lady Karina an ice queen. In the academy courtyard, Tasha saw her friend with a boy and called her over to greet her. This weekend, Daniel and she were going to a cafe, and the future Archduchess invited the girl to join. Karina declined, inventing a date with her boyfriend. As soon as she left, the students whispered that she was dating someone inferior so he wouldn't leave her. Tatilla, as always, in her usual style, pretended to worry about her friend. In the garden, Andrew was reading a book fervently. When he felt a finger on his cheek, the boy thought it was Karina, but he was surprised to see her friend. The girl asked to see the book, and, guessing his taste correctly, proposed to Andrew that they be friends. Finally, Karina could relax and enjoy a spa treatment. Lily was preparing the cream and giving an incredible massage. The princess felt like she was in paradise and thought the girl should open a massage business. Finally, the princess was ready. Thanks to Lily, she looked and felt splendid. His Majesty was already waiting for the young woman in the residence courtyard. Karina asked if Aster was tired and if she was overwhelming him, but the Emperor replied that he loved his job. The couple was very happy to see each other and decided to take a walk together. The Emperor asked her when she learned magic, and Karina blushed, replying that her powers weren't that great, and that without him, Nivea and she could be dead. The boy affirmed that he arrived when everything was over. Perhaps she mistook Aster for someone else. She understood that she was mistaken, but at that moment, those eyes were exactly the same as the Emperor's. In any case, the boy thinks Karina is incredible, even without magic. She barely learned and already saved a person. Without hesitation, she plunged into the flames. The girl doubted if she acted recklessly and could have hurt others. But Aster promised he would always be by her side, in love and in politics, and he asked her not to doubt herself. Archduke Andrew was heading to a meeting with the emperor, not understanding why he had been called. Since no incident had occurred, he asked the guest to come in and sit down. It seemed he wasn't going to reprimand him. The man decided to get straight to the point and said he had to thank the Archduke. He found out that a couple of weeks ago Andrew had been on Baris Street. There was a problem in his boutique, and it required his personal presence. The emperor continued by saying that a fire broke out in one of the boutiques that day. Andrew became worried, sure that no one had seen him there. The man recounted that Karina thought he had saved her, but the emperor wasn't there. The Archduke admitted that he was passing by coincidentally and was able to help. The emperor changed his expression, but said everything was fine and that Andrew deserved a reward, giving him valuable seasonal gems. The young men said goodbye, and the Archduke headed for the exit. He felt like a wild beast was burning his back with its gaze. However, the emperor decided to ask him one more question. He already knew that Gloucester's wife hated Karina and suspected they were involved. Aster pressured Gloucester with magic, who began making excuses, saying that Raymond, who had appeared in the capital, was probably the culprit, making things worse. Andrew always pretended to know nothing and always wanted to snatch what belonged to Aster. Even in childhood, the Duke was more loved by his father than Aster. The man was willing to give everything to the boy. Even if Aster already had it, he looked for much better things for the younger one. Aster had to repeat to himself that everything would turn out well, and that he would indeed be emperor in the end. A few years later, the previous emperor passed away, and a brutal fight for the throne began. After murdering the second prince, the main cause of the chaos, Aster went straight to look for Andrew. The boy fled, and that saved his life. If someone attacked the throne, Aster would suspect his half-brother. Again, luck was on his side. For his reputation, the emperor couldn't get rid of the duke, so he pretended to believe him. Upon leaving Aster's office, the boy removed his nervous smile and panicked. Back at his residence, Gloucester nervously asked the maid about his wife. Of course, the woman noticed something was wrong. The spouses acted like they wanted to kill each other, and she even saw a dagger the first night. Finally, finding Tasha, the Duke demanded the girl hand over the bracelet. He wanted to know where the magic he introduced that first night had gone. With effort, the girl said she didn't know if the bracelet had magic or not. Andrew knew his wife was deceiving him, and enraged, pushed her aside. The boy shouted that she didn't have an ounce of conscience and ruined his life. Tatilla didn't understand what she did wrong, but apologized through tears. The Duke knew that Raymond had secretly used his magic and caused the fire. He reminded her that their marriage depended on her promise to make him emperor, so she had to stop fooling around. That night, the girl headed to a house in the middle of the forest. Ray received her at the door, covered in bruises and scratches, but poor Titi would endure anything. She suspected she wanted to ask him for something, otherwise, why would she come in the middle of the darkness? Tatilla always wrapped a lock of hair around her finger when she wanted to ask Raymond for something difficult. This time, Ray suffered for her, so she felt bad asking him for anything. But when he said he would do anything, Titi asked him to kill Karina. In the Taller Street shopping district, the princess and Lily hurried towards the perfumers. Mother and daughter were overjoyed with the visits. They apologized for the mess and invited them in. Business was booming, but Nivea and Lella hadn't slept in 3 days. Dedicated to research, as the order-loving maid she was, Lily immediately started cleaning everything, while the princess asked to be shown the new fragrances. Finally, they all sat around a round table, and Lella began the presentation. The new scent was created for the strong women of the world. Spicy top notes that impact, soft and glamorous heart notes, and subtle and long-lasting base notes. The perfumer had done even better than the princess expected, and now it was time to ask questions. The princess worried if such a different product would draw the attention of noble ladies. And Lella replied that the scent had good fixation, intense top notes, and was familiar, but with its own charm. Just like the princess, Lily thought the perfumer was an undisputed genius. She not only created good scents, but also understood the seasons of perfume. Of course, Karina was speechless when she learned that Lella wanted to name the aroma after her, believing she was not worthy of being the muse for such a fragrance. The perfumer showed the girl that she knew how to wait for the precise moment and acted without hesitation when necessary. She was brave and always ready to help. So the aroma conveyed the image of the lady who fought the flames that day, saving Nivea's life. The sun had already begun to set on the horizon, and the perfumers said goodbye to the girls, wishing them a happy journey. Karina was happy to have been able to help Nivea and Lela, preventing Tasha from ruining such talent. In the past, she wouldn't have even thought of involving someone in her revenge, but teamwork proved surprisingly effective. For the first time, Karina, as intensely as Lily, looked forward to the ball. In the palace, the emperor received joyful news. His approval rating among citizens had increased by 20% compared to the previous year. The reason for this was the policy of kindness towards the people, and also friendly relations with the Pioner family had their influence. Upon learning that Princess Pioner had arrived at the palace, the emperor concluded the report and dismissed the advisors. Upon meeting, he apologized for always inviting her to boring workplaces. But the girl liked it the other way around. This way, she felt closer to Aster. Today, Karina came to give the boy an invitation to the family ball. She didn't want him to feel obliged, so she was ready to accept a refusal if the emperor was still busy. Despite the heavy workload, Aster promised to set aside time and attend. After all, it was about their relationship, and he couldn't deny anything to his beloved. Karina's outfit for the ball was magnificent, but she doubted if it was too revealing. The parents were speechless when they saw their daughter. As good parents, they thought it was too provocative, and Karina said she didn't like that clothing. On the girl's 10th birthday, Tatilla dressed better than the birthday girl, and Karina felt very bad that day. At that time, she lived discreetly so as not to influence the original, but it was enough. Today she was going to shine. The ball began, and everyone was having a great time, enjoying the atmosphere and company. Suddenly, the lights went out, and the guests were truly scared. Under the spotlights, Princess Karina appeared to welcome all guests to the family ball. Before the celebration started in full swing, the young woman decided to gift everyone present something never seen before. And she presented a prepared aroma. Pioner's parents watched their daughter proudly from a distance, cheering her on. The ladies were delighted with the show. Paper butterflies fluttered around the hall, imbued with an incredible scent that would now be hard to forget. Karina was glad that the guest reaction was good, and the ball was a success. When young, the princess thought suitors were taken from her because of her role, but it turned out she had locked herself away. For the first time in a long time, after greeting Mrs. Butterfly, Daniel looked at her with such tenderness and paid her a compliment. The girl wished her friend a good night and moved on, but the boy called her. Daniel asked Karina to dance with him, and in light of recent events, the girl was going to refuse. Just a couple of meters away from them, a glass of champagne shattered. The owner of the glass was Tatilla. With a pitiful look, she asked how her friend could betray her. 4 hours before the ball, Tati was very nervous. It wasn't like her, and she wanted to get rid of Karina as soon as possible. The maid who brought the girl tea found the Archduchess biting her finger until it bled, and she was horrified. While bandaging Tatilla's finger, she expressed her doubts about whether the girl should go to the ball, since she didn't feel very well. But for the Archduchess, the letter was not only an invitation, but a warning that Karina planned to take her place. Tati learned from a woman that her husband was not ready yet. She would have to leave first. The maid encouraged the young woman, assuring her that everything would soon get better. Tasha agreed, as she considered herself special. When the Archduchess appeared at the ball, all eyes turned to stare at her. The girl lived intoxicated by the admiration, flattery, and envy others felt towards her. All of this was balm for her soul. However, that night, high society wasn't only talking about her. Karina's scent also captured attention. Lela, whom Tasha recognized as Nevia, told the girl about the scent and asked her to smell it to listen. Tati felt uncomfortable. She had a feeling something was wrong. While enjoying the buffet, the girl spotted her faithful admirer, Daniel, out of the corner of her eye. Not only had his sympathy dropped to 50%, but he had also come secretly from her. Tasha decided to regain the boy's affection, and as she followed him, she saw a very unpleasant scene. The girl burst into tears, and Daniel's affection level started to rise. Everything was going according to plan. Karina intervened in the scene. She even found it amusing that, being married to an archduke, Tati was flirting with a friend. The girl left her friends to have fun among themselves and set off in the opposite direction. This time, Daniel couldn't let it go and ran after the princess, asking them all to talk together. The girl didn't understand what was necessary. Last time she already said she didn't consider Tasha and Daniel her friends. It seems they completely lost shame or reason by forgetting Karina's nickname, which originated at the academy because of her. In her 17th autumn, when Tasha started dating Daniel, the girl thought she was the heroine, and Daniel's choice as her protagonist. And that's why she thought the original's reign was also over. Due to the original's influence, whatever Tasha did, others saw her positively. And if Karina got angry with her, they treated her like a villain. One day, Tati and the boys gathered without Karina. Tati was telling them how Daniel confessed to her that, since childhood, he liked her more than Karina. The boys thought the girl was just getting in the way of the couple, as Tati was so sweet and beautiful that Karina felt inferior, envying her friend. That day, Karina overheard everything the boys were saying, including that they called her the envious princess. The girl didn't understand why they were doing this to her. Tatilla was the protagonist, and she a simple secondary character. And yet, Karina considered her a friend. During lunch in the dining room, she listened to the judgments of her classmates. Every word was a dagger in the girl's heart. No matter how out of place she felt, Karina was not going to tolerate such treatment. So she asked Tatilla and Daniel to stop the rumors. Tati felt sorry for her friend's misfortune, saying she wasn't to blame for those rumors. What disconcerted the girl the most was Daniel. As a friend, he advised her that rumors don't arise without reason, so the princess should reflect. Seeing those two, who completely contradicted each other, Karina finally understood. It didn't matter what family she was from, how she looked, what skills she had, because Tatilla was the protagonist, and she only a secondary character they could insult. Karina called Daniel a coward. He didn't want to be mean, and fell for it like an idiot at the key moment. So, if he wanted to keep falsely calling her his friend, he needed to rethink what she was really like. Tasha played the victim, sobbing and accusing the girl of being cold. All attention turned back to the Archduchess. The guests commented that Princess Pioner had made a mistake, and seeing her cry, their hearts broke. The emperor appeared at the celebration. He felt it was unfair, 2 against 1, and offered the princess to take her side. It was no longer necessary, as the Archduke appeared next to Tati. He asked his wife to stop making scenes and apologize. The girl screamed that she didn't want to and ran down the stairs. Seeing how well the emperor and the princess got along, Andrew felt a little bad. And he left too. Astor apologized to Karina for being late and whispered something in her ear. The boy laughed. After all, it was a masked ball, and she had to keep her identity secret, although everyone knew who she was. After joking a little more, Astor invited the princess to have fun together, and she happily accepted his invitation. The boy hated sweets, but ate them at the party anyway. The more Karina got to know him, the more tender he seemed to her. Astor didn't understand the fascination with masked balls, but upon participating, he began to understand it. With their faces hidden, he felt calmer, and knowing each other, they could pretend to be strangers. An incredible freedom, without revealing who they were. The boy asked Karina if she felt free. He had noticed for some time that the girl was always thinking and worrying about something. The princess had been betrayed so many times that she stopped believing in herself. Perhaps that's why Karina worried so much about everything. She was already drunk and begged them to talk about something fun. Since the princess invited the emperor to such a grand celebration, he decided to reciprocate by inviting her to the hunting festival at the palace. The girl feared the event was very important and that perhaps she shouldn't attend. But Astor sensed her distress and told her it would be enough if she accepted the prey he hunted. He begged the princess not to apologize anymore, as he had told her he would always be on her side, so she could be selfish and use him. Whether due to the alcohol or not, Karina's heart beat so fast it seemed it would burst out of her chest. Tati could no longer find her place at the ball and stood leaning against the wall. With her head down, Andrew approached to go home together, but she refused, fearing her husband had a sweet voice and a warm hand, but an icy look. The boy did not insist and headed alone for the exit, without a word to his wife. She felt awful. Tatilla heard rumors about her life with her husband, begging someone to help her. Tati's bracelet shone in a special way, as if giving hope to its owner. When she raised her head, she saw Daniel, and he offered to escort her home like a gentleman. On the street, they approached a carriage. He told her it was her transport and that she could use it to return. He added that he was her friend and that she could always count on him. She thought that, after all, he was good. Tati approached Daniel to hug him from behind, but he abruptly rejected her. The boy admitted that Karina was right and that, from now on, he would keep his distance from her. On the way home, Tasha nervously bit her bandaged fingers. First Andrew, and now Daniel looked at her like that too. The girl thought Karina must have done something, otherwise this couldn't have happened. She had to get rid of her rival soon. A desperate boy blocked the carriage's path, practically throwing himself under it. With a sharp movement, the coachman had to stop the transport, so as not to hurt the madman. The boy headed for the carriage, and the man tried to stop him but failed. Wilhelm opened the door, and, looking inside to make sure the Archduchess was there, he entered the carriage. It scared the girl badly. First the carriage shook, crushing Titi, and now a guy burst in. Wilhelm's sympathy level approached 100. With tears in her eyes, she begged her beloved to tell her why he avoided her. Tasha pressed her palm against his cheek and replied that she avoided the boy for his own good. She said that people suspected they had a romantic relationship, but Wilhelm didn't care. He believed that being lovers in their time was normal, and he wasn't worried about the looks of others, since he had already given up everything for her. All documents and inheritance went to Karina. He was kicked out of the guard, and practically out of his house too. The knight gave up everything just to be close to the girl. Desperate, he threw himself into his beloved's arms, and Titi promised him she wouldn't abandon him. The Archduke didn't understand how Tati could ask him to accept her lover into his guard. Of course, the girl saw him as a friend, not a lover, but others wouldn't believe it. If Andrew accepted Wilhelm, they would take him for a fool, yielding his place to his wife's lover. Tati knew her husband needed power, so she said Wilhelm was one of the best swordsmen in the empire. And if Andrew were strong, he could resist the emperor. After thinking it over, the Archduke agreed with Tati. He was willing to accept the lover to regain what belonged to him. Upon leaving the office, the girl leaned against the wall and collapsed onto the floor. After the bracelet incident, the dizziness worsened due to the tension. But it wasn't the time. Tati had to concentrate, or she would lose to Karina. The masked ball was ending. The guests thanked the princess for the celebration and asked when the perfume would go on sale. Due to the good reception, the girl could bet big. Perhaps it was worth improving the packaging and launching a collector's edition. Lily, the princess's most loyal fan, was proud of how she had humiliated her detractors. And she was glad that the emperor had appeared in Karina's life. The girls said goodnight, and Karina noticed a bright light coming from the jewelry box where she kept her bracelet. The princess opened it, and bright rays illuminated the entire room. A game notification appeared in front of the girl. One of the endings had been unlocked because Karina took the soap C from Wilhelm and started a perfume business. The new notification stated that achieving objectives weakened the characteristic restriction, and the girl felt the space around her become freer. Of course, Karina suspected it, but seeing the word restriction with her own eyes was strange. So, the reason the princess felt a strange increase in Tasha's influence before was that the girl had completed Andrew's ending, and the original restriction had weakened. In any case, Karina was now sure that seeing the ending weakened that effect. If she saw it, perhaps she could now see the base of Daniel Malfurion's prestigious hospital. He only finds and sponsors doctors who research new surgical methods. Karina just had to open the hospital in that location. Reaching the end with Raymond will be the most difficult. He is very hostile towards the princess, and in the ending she knew, he renounces his status as master of the magic tower and swears loyalty to Tasha. Raymond would never be loyal to Karina, and it would be difficult with him, so the girl decided to think about it later. First, she had to attack Daniel. The important talk with Daniel required meeting in person. The Western lands, the princess planned to claim them as compensation for breaking the engagement, even if it was late. And again, Tasha appeared in the story. The boy had recently sold those lands to her. Karina couldn't believe her friend's stupidity. He sold his land without even asking what for. Nivea also went to Titi before her, and now she buys the lands. She acted as if she knew the original endings. And that was not simple coincidence. So the princess asked Daniel to introduce her to his close friend, a specialist in magic and medicine. Although not in the same place, she would open a hospital with the same people. Maybe that way she would influence the ending. Daniel doubted again. Karina wouldn't be surprised if Tasha had also taken her friend Robert by now. In fact, Daniel and Robert stopped speaking after kicking him out of his family. In that case, the girl begged her friend to find out where Robert was now. Daniel promised to fulfill her request and apologized again for the incidents at the academy. If he truly felt sorry, Karina asked him to stop hiding behind hypocrisy. It was the only way to gain her forgiveness. The girl, sitting in her room, reflected. She thought it would be easy, but nothing went well. Neither lands nor doctor found. Just in case, she decided to test the ending with Raymond. The problem was that Karina didn't know how much she should coincide with the original. The keyword in Raymond's ending was loyalty to Taddy. Perhaps any act that proved his loyalty to Karina would count as a condition. It was worth experimenting. Only Raymond wouldn't swear loyalty to the girl. Suddenly, an idea lit up in her head. A few days later, one of the Pioneer Mansion's knights informed the princess, in the middle of the night, that Raymond had broken into her house. The guard caught him and locked him in the food storage room, so the girl rushed to meet the unexpected guest. Everything was turning out better than she thought. In the storage room, the boy was tied with ropes to a chair, and his mouth gagged with a rag. Raymond couldn't say a word, and Karina was even happy. Finally, the boy stopped being noisy, couldn't use his great magic, and could feel like a normal person. The girl removed the gag from her ex-lover and informed him that she had compromising information about Taddy. And therefore, if he truly loved her, he should propose a deal to Karina. Raymond wasn't going to make deals with someone like her, and the princess believed someone like him should crawl at her feet. The difference between them was that Karina was self-critical, and the boy was not. Even his own family rejected Karcel, and he hadn't yet become the owner of the magic tower. Moreover, due to his horrible character, he had a lot of enemies, but he was certainly arrogant. Karina grabbed the boy by the neck and told him that, since sending the letter, she foresaw that he would sneak into her house, because she saw guys like him coming. Raymond tried to prove to the princess that she was no better than him, but the girl just laughed. She was no longer the Karina from the academy, incapable of baseness. Unlike when the fire occurred, now she had irrefutable proof that the mage invaded her house. Raymond would be kicked out of the candidates for Master of the Magic Tower, and then Karina would spread the recording of Tasha in the royal palace, starting a fire and insulting the emperor. If he was lucky, hard labor. If not, his head would roll. Raymond asked what the girl wanted, and she joked that she needed his body, which provoked an angry reaction from the boy. Getting to the point, Karina set out her conditions. The royal hunt would start soon, and during it Raymond had to offer his house to Karina, which meant loyalty and love. Of course, the boy wasn't enthusiastic about the idea, but the choice was limited. Either not see the position of master of the tower, or swallow his pride once. The princess sent for the guards, who were to release Ray, and until then, he had time to think. Since Karina couldn't trust Raymond's word, she presented him with a contract. He just had to sign. The content of the document outraged the boy, as it stated that during the royal hunt, Raymond had to offer his house to Karina, and until then he had to obey the girl without question. In case of breach of contract, he would lose all his magical power and the position of master of the magic tower. In the end, Karcel had to give in and stamped his signature on the document. The girl cast a spell on the contract, and a mark appeared on the young man's neck. His magical power still hadn't returned, and Raymond burst into fury when he couldn't use magic. He started giving orders again, which infuriated Karina, and she threw him out onto the street. Raymond swore to curse her in his next life if he died at the hands of thugs, and someone was spying on him. Standing on the street, Karcel already regretted not having listened to Tati. The boy refused to kill Karina, and she flew into a rage. The Archduchess screamed that he was a liar. In reality, the mage didn't want to go to prison, nor did he hate the princess enough to kill her. Tati accused him of being like all men and prepared to leave. Raymond begged her not to leave and pulled a ring out of a drawer. A ring to control minds. If the girl had used it well, her mess with Karina would have been resolved. Besides, the ring left no magical trace. So Tati could be calm. Her face changed instantly, and she threw herself into Raymond's arms. Taking pity, Karina opened the door. From his guilty face, it seemed he had been insulting her for a while. The princess asked if Ray had recovered his powers, and he proudly showed them off. As a sign of kindness towards her slave, the girl assigned him a guard. Seeing everything, the stranger in the tree regretted losing such an opportunity. Outside, Duke Daniel clung to Karina, saying the area was dangerous and that he wanted to see Robert. Near the doctor's house, some creditors were causing a ruckus and didn't look very legal. Daniel offered to handle it. The princess didn't know he could be so brave. Bewildered, he stammered something and the fat man slammed him against the wall, suggesting he respect the cue. Malfurion apologized to the girl for his failure. Daniel was what he was. What could be done about it? Karina shouted at the boys to get their attention and whistled with all her might. The knight landed right in front of the girl, preparing to defend the lady. By imperial law, unregistered persons could not grant loans to other citizens. As a capital guard, he had the right to detain them. Daniel didn't understand what had happened, and the girl explained to him. His Majesty had assigned her a bodyguard. Entering the house, the young people greeted Robert, although he wasn't visible yet. Karina found the man under the table. He was begging for his life and promising to return the debt. After confirming they were familiar faces, Robert finally got up from the floor and greeted the guests. The princess introduced herself and begged the man to dedicate some of his time to her. Robert recognized the girl. She was the one Daniel broke the engagement with, and he was happy that they reunited. Karina made it clear to Robert that he was mistaken. Actually, she came to offer him the position of head physician at the hospital. The man replied that they had the wrong direction, since someone like him had no right to be a doctor. Although she didn't know the full situation, nor the exact reasons, she knew his research had been suspended 3 years ago. Karina begged him to be a doctor in her hospital and continue his research. Robert thanked her for the honor, but proposed more worthy candidates: Erica Foreman and Allison Cameron, the doctors with whom he conducted his research. He couldn't say anything else and asked the young people to leave. Of course, Karina didn't remember everything exactly, but she was sure that at the end of the game there were 3 doctors. Daniel told her that the 3 of them studied and worked in Dr. Gregory's laboratory. But as far as he knew, after the doctor's death from an incurable illness, they separated. Foreman comes from a humble family and, after the laboratory closed, abandoned her studies due to financial problems. Allison, for her part, is Tasha's attending physician. Actually, it's not that Daniel hid it from Karina. It's just that she never asked. Besides, she always got in a bad mood when Tasha was involved. The boy always talked about coincidences with the princess and the archduchess. She asked if their breakup and his relationship with Tasha were also a mistake. Daniel wanted to be good for everyone, but ended up being a hypocrite in Karina's eyes. The girl didn't expect help from her friend, but Raymond couldn't have the game's ending. Daniel had to have the original ending. They had to gather those 3 and name Robert as head physician. But first, what happened between them? Daniel stopped Karina. He could help her. He knew where Eric Foreman was. It turns out that Mr. Foreman worked in a general laboratory. Tasha had placed him there at the request of Mrs. Allison. Tasha again. Karina supposed that, as with Nivea, the Archduchess was involved with the trio of doctors. The young people found Eric, and Karina introduced herself to the boy. She asked why he didn't continue researching. He replied that money was always important due to his social status. Studying helped him survive. The girl told him that Robert had recommended a colleague to her, but it turned out the friends no longer spoke. In any case, Karina was planning to open a hospital, so she invited the man to join her team to continue his research. 4-day work week, flexible hours, paid vacation. She promised better conditions than his current employer. Of course, there was no need to decide immediately, so if Foreman had any questions, he could send a letter to the Pioneer family mansion. To conclude, the doctor asked Karina to pass something on to Robert if they met again. That was that. At that moment, they had no other choice. Sometime later, the butler delivered a letter to the young woman, finally sent by the doctor. Along with the letter, the man also provided documents with information about the association, thanks to which the events between this trio could be clarified. As Karina thought, this happened in the same month 3 years ago. After the professor's death, Allison became Tasha's doctor, at the same time that the young woman contacted Nivea. Well, if the princess planned to meet Allison, there was only one suitable day for it. At that moment, Lily ran into the room, panting to report something. The girl screamed that something terrible had happened. Due to lack of air, she couldn't say anything coherent, so the butler went to get a glass of water for her. Finally recovered, Lily recounted that a new perfume boutique had appeared right in front of the shop they were preparing to open. Moreover, the boutique belonged to the Hunt Marquise's family, not the ducal family of Gloucester. Probably, Tatilla didn't want to act openly, so she used the Marquis for this move. It was rumored that Lord Wilhelm had been appointed master of the Silver Dragon Knighthood Order, belonging to the ducal Gloucester family. Obviously, Lily was indignant that someone like him became master of the order. Something told Karina that Tatilla sent Wilhelm, who had nowhere else to go, to the order. And as payment, she asked to open the boutique. Lily also perfectly understood that it wasn't a coincidence, and became even more indignant. In the end, it was something to be expected. Furthermore, the appearance of a competitor in a nearby territory is normal in business. Karina did not despair. She believed that every crisis was an opportunity to improve her boutique. After the news, the princess gathered the girls to recover and decide what to do. Now, after presenting the new scent at the masked ball, they faced a problem. That is, the appearance of a competitor right in front of their store. Since that vile boutique got ahead of their opening by days, they had to crush that unethical rival. The flame of anger ignited, and the girls accepted without hesitation what Karina proposed. Today there was only one topic. They would postpone the inauguration of their boutique. After Lily's declaration, Nivea and Lela opened their mouths in surprise. With the competitor, they should speed up the opening, and their perfume was famous from the ball. Karina gave them a document with names, clients ready to buy after smelling the perfume. To start, they would sell the perfumes in a single batch to the 100 most important people on the list. As the girls could already see at the ball, in a community as small as the aristocracy, information flies. Rumors of their perfumes will spread like a virus, and when everyone talks about them, and interest reaches its peak, they will open their boutique right after the royal hunt. It will be the best perfumery in the empire, Nivea and Lela's boutique. So now they wouldn't tremble in fear nor rush to open the store, but would wait to strengthen themselves, and for their brand to grow. In this regard, Karina's plan had 2 points. On the ground floor would be the perfume lines for the common customer, the mass market, and on the second and third floors, the premium lines. Nivea was encouraged to propose an idea she had been postponing for a long time due to financial problems. It was about creating basic cosmetics with the fragrances of their perfumes. For example, some bath products or body creams would combine well with their main scents. This way, even those who are not big fans of perfumery could enjoy these wonderful fragrances. And moreover, along with these cosmetics, the aroma of the perfume would be revealed more deeply. To top it off, by combining cosmetics and perfumes, everyone will be able to create a unique fragrance, different from any other. But there was a big problem. For the cosmetics sent to last, they needed to use alchemy. It was rumored that the Carcels had patented that field 3 years ago, so they required their help. What a coincidence! 3 years ago, after the Archduchess left and funding ended, all alchemists, including the Carcels, cut ties with Nivea. The woman was still burning over that incident. Karina asked her not to worry, promising she would find an alchemist for her. Then, Nivea suggested Raymond Carcel, and the princess didn't understand what she meant. Female intuition told her that Archduchess Tatia was secretly with the registered Carcel alchemists. They acted as if talking to her would bring terrible consequences. But Raymond was different. He was not in the association, but he was a Carcel and an alchemist. Could she use loopholes? Yes. Because of him, Nivea lost her recipes and sense of smell, but she wouldn't let fleeting emotions get in the way of her work. Now, the important thing was to open the business and make it successful. Karina noticed that Nivea had changed a lot since their first meeting, as if she had spread her wings. She told the woman that, indeed, she was a strong person. Now Nivea was sure that she would believe in her strength and that of her daughter, and would move forward. As Karina thought, choosing Nivea as a partner was the best decision. That being the case, it was time to contact Raymond and use their contract. Although the princess agreed to cooperate with him, she opposed Nivea meeting the boy in person. Karina hoped the woman would accept her as an intermediary. Although they would be strategic allies now, in the future she had to take proper revenge. The young woman visited Raymond to inform him about a matter in which she would need his help. The mage mocked, saying that even though they signed a contract, he was not her servant. Moreover, his magical powers had returned, so he had to take his guard and leave. Karina declared that he was simply afraid that she would force him to do something strange, and the boy immediately began to deny it. The girl handed him some sheets with information. She structured everything he had to do. The princess committed to covering all the research expenses. Raymond was surprised. She could have asked people from her clan. He, a mage and aspiring master of the magic tower, did not want alchemy. Genius alchemist as a child. Now he hates that science and his family. But Karina doesn't care. There is a contract, and he must obey. Raymond rubbed his neck, where the seal was, and promised that she would know what would happen when the contract was fulfilled. Karina prepared the contract. He just had to sign. Everything ready. He just had to investigate how the papers indicated. Raymond signed, although he thought the girl was very arrogant. By Karina's order, the guard had to stay with the mage for a while. They had to watch him. He could plot something, break the contract, or steal secret recipes. No one knew what was going through his mind. Raymond was alarmed, uncomfortable with a stranger in the house. But the guard, very comfortable in his armchair, felt great. The experiment should start next week. End of discussion. Karina headed for the exit. While the young woman reviewed documents in her chambers, Lily brought her a cup of tea. Lately, the princess worked too hard and got no rest because of the boutique opening. Since she closed a successful deal today, Lily suggested she rest. But she still didn't know how to organize the third floor. Before the royal hunt, she had to supervise construction, verify directions, follow perfume development, and design packaging. Furthermore, Raymond had many enemies, and according to the guard, half the kingdom wanted to eliminate him. She didn't care much about his fate, but his recipes could leak, so she had to investigate who was lurking around the boy. The princess was right, but she worked so much and was always busy that Lily worried about her. So she asked her to rest and take a bath, while she gave her a massage. Karina jumped cheerfully from her seat. It was exactly what she needed. On the third floor, she could open a spa with massages using products from her brand. Lily screamed desperately. She was talking about resting, and she was still thinking about work. Apparently, being an entrepreneur was in her blood. That same day, the emperor was having tea in one of the halls of his palace. The unexpected thing was that he wanted to meet Mrs. Pioneer, not her daughter. The woman implied that she didn't have much free time. Astor heard that Lord Raymond had recently broken into the duchy illegally, and he didn't understand why she was so lenient. Karina's mother frowned, not understanding what he was talking about. She didn't hesitate to sacrifice her hair for her daughter, but it seemed Raymond was still doing fine. The emperor knew that Raymond hated the princess, and assumed Mrs. Pioneer knew it too, so she probably set a trap for him that suppressed his magical powers. The woman asked if he was implying that, because of that, she allowed Raymond to threaten her daughter. Astor would like to say no, but he was also worried about his beloved. Mrs. Pioneer thought His Majesty was meeting her daughter for political reasons, so she was surprised that he cared about the human aspect. What she regretted most in her life was introducing her daughter to Raymond. Because she thought they were compatible, they weren't like other children, they acted like adults, as if hiding something, but at the same time, they were very similar in their peculiar way, and in their inability to fit in. The woman was mistaken. She was not only a bad mother, but she also inflicted incurable emotional wounds on her only daughter. In that case, the emperor didn't understand why he had left him among the candidates for Master of the Magic Tower, since the mage could discard them. Mrs. Pioneer declared that it didn't matter, as Raymond wouldn't become the master of the Magic Tower anyway. About 10 years ago, Raymond and she met at the old Carcel laboratory. The woman had to pick up an order placed with that laboratory and ran into the boy by chance. Raymond seemed too young to be one of the employees, so she was interested in knowing who he was. One of the employees told her he was the son of the Carcel family. They said he was a true talent in alchemy. That's why they placed him there. The boy was very thin. He seemed covered in scars and small puncture wounds. Unfortunately, at that time Mrs. Pioneer couldn't talk to him. According to laboratory rules, only other employees could contact the workers. So, using her magical power, she sent a petal from the second floor directly into the boy's hands. The woman thanked the employee for the order and hurried to leave. Raymond still didn't understand what had just happened. That night, on the third floor of the research center, in one of the testing rooms, the boy lay on the bed looking at the petal. The object glowed and suddenly filled the room with an intense pink light. At that very moment, Freya Pioneer, the same woman who visited his laboratory in the afternoon, appeared in front of Raymond. She explained that she was a passing mage and asked the young alchemy genius for his name. The boy introduced himself as Carcel 30, 627. It sounded more like a postal address than a name. Anyway, after their encounter, Freya decided to review some laboratory documents. It turned out they were conducting very interesting secret experiments called Project Mage. To children with little or no magic, they illegally injected synthesized magical power through alchemy, which would then regenerate on its own in the body. Thus, an artificial mage was created. The result of the experiment, the death of all 11 test subjects, except the boy, and although he was the only one left, it was only half success. No matter how many medicines they give Carcel, he still has very little magic. The boy was 11 or 12 years old, almost the same age as Freya's daughter. She didn't understand how a teenager could be so thin, so she offered him a bun to eat something. The boy lunged at the food immediately. Apparently, they weren't feeding him well here. Freya didn't know how to tell him what she had to say. Most likely, Karcel would die before reaching puberty, that the foolish alchemists keep trying. But for a talented mage, it was obvious. It wasn't that he had little magic. She directed the flow of the boy's energy towards herself to assess its quantity. The problem was that he had received a huge amount of magic that he didn't know how to control. If he continues with so much magic, at some point, like his little companions, he will explode and die. Tears ran down the child's face. But Freya didn't want to scare him that much. She promised to reveal how to survive to him. But in return, Karcel must not tell anyone that she helped him. He would keep that secret for life. From that day on, every night she would teach him how to control magic so he could escape the laboratory. After the escape, the boy had to go to the Mages Association and show the letter of recommendation. Being a member would make it harder for alchemists to harm him, but in turn, he would become an enemy of the Karcel clan, and he would wander aimlessly. Karcel 3627 was willing to even give up his surname, but it was worth keeping. In the future, if a certain power was reached, that surname would be useful when the truth came out. A name composed of numbers wasn't useful for documents, so Freya racked her brains thinking of how to name the boy. After considering several options, they finally settled on Karcel Raymond. Thus, Raymond joined the Mages Association and even applied for the position of next master of the Magic Tower. In reality, the Karcel clan's experiment only had partial success. The first law of alchemy dictated that to obtain something, one must give something of equal value. Raymond was born as a normal boy without magic, but now he possessed enormous magical power. He became a candidate for master of the Magic Tower, and all thanks to the magic created by alchemy. Over time, he would have to pay for it. Karina, with her servants, went to meet the boy to deliver research materials. Blood flowed from Raymond's mouth. Thanks to Freya teaching him how to use magic, he was lucky to survive and reach adulthood. But the time to pay is approaching. At the door, a guard received the princess, who had heard coughing. Raymond was inside, but his condition left much to be desired, so it was worth calling a doctor. At that very moment, the boy collapsed to the floor, startling everyone. Karina was sitting at the head of the bed, where the mage had been placed. She reached out her hand towards Raymond, and he instantly grabbed it, apparently thinking she was Tasha. Between dreams, he mumbled that he would try hard and begged them not to abandon him. The girl asked the guard if anything had happened before her arrival, but there was nothing. At least in the morning, Raymond was fine, and then suddenly he started coughing blood. Moreover, the boy wanted to say something else. It was about the hitmen he mentioned earlier. According to him, most were sent by the Karcel family, to which Raymond also belonged. Karina asked what he had done for his own family to try to kill him. But the mage, coming to his senses, said it was none of her business. Raymond didn't understand why he had fainted, as he never had health problems. So he continued pretending to be strong and justified the fainting, saying he was just a little tired. In that case, Karina asked him if he wanted to let go of her hand, and he immediately withdrew it. It seemed he had recovered, so she prepared to leave. The doctor would arrive soon, and she asked Raymond to take care of himself until he fully recovered. Initially, she wanted to give him some alchemy materials, so she left everything on the table for him to start working when he recovered. But today, the boy could rest and recover. Raymond was surprised that he could rest, although, of course, he couldn't work well in his condition. Karina gave him a vial of aromatic oil that helped with fatigue. Lily prepared it herself, so she felt bad giving it away. Although if the boy died before finishing the work, it would be sad. The girl headed for the exit, and Raymond began to make sounds as if he were going to thank her. Although, of course, that was beyond his capabilities. So the boy stated that she should expect no thanks. Karina advised him to see the oil as a gift, to research, and not to delay. Since Raymond considered himself a genius mage, he promised he would make cosmetics even better than he deserved. When the girl finally left, a blush spread across her face. The boy couldn't believe he had appeared before the princess in such a regrettable state. In her chambers, Tatilla examined the ring Raymond had given her. It seemed the ornament was for men, as it was too large. That time, Ray told her he would help, but then he disappeared. So the girl was sure that by giving her the ring, he was only trying to get away from her. And that's it. Tatilla's head started hurting again. Lately, as soon as she thought about something serious, she got a migraine. Very inopportunely, Andrew decided to enter the room. The girl discreetly took off the magic ring and put it back with the rest of the costume jewelry. My husband was preparing for the palace. The imperial hunting season was about to begin. Karina had to attend too, since the hunt was an official event and the first since Aster ascended the throne. It would be strange to have a relationship with the emperor and not be present at such an event. In that case, Tasha also offered to go. Andrew asked his wife to explain her intentions, and she reminded him of her promise to make him emperor. She begged him to trust her and promised that she would recover everything he had lost. Raymond was reading a letter from Karina, where she demanded he fulfill his promise at the imperial hunt. Looking at a vial of oil, he apologized internally, as he had already made a decision. In the guest room of the Duke's mansion, Tasha and Wilhelm were talking about the boutique business. He did everything by the book, and customers kept arriving. The perfume with her name was almost sold out the day after it went on sale. The Carcel heir, Ethan, also helped its success, spreading the word that Tasha constantly used that fragrance. Everyone rushed to buy it. At this rate, soon everyone would forget about Karina's perfumes, which were talked about so much. But it was impossible to get them. 873. Like a happy puppy, Wilhelm claimed that his beloved was not only beautiful, but also talented, and that the word perfection was invented especially for her. Through acquaintances, he heard that the pre-sale for a limited collection of Karina's scent had opened. So Tasha asked if there was any news about the boutique opening. Wilhelm knew from the association that Karina planned to postpone the opening, so the boy thought she had gotten scared and fled with her tail between her legs. Tasha, on the contrary, thought her ex-friend had hatched another vile plan. Her beloved supported her, saying that, unlike her, honest and sincere, there was always something vile and despicable in the princess. Titi got up, walking away, but Wilhelm stopped her, suggesting they go see how her boutique was doing. He was clearly overestimating himself, and the girl informed him that today she and Andy had matters to attend to. This time, the Archduke appeared at the right moment. He was worried because the knight wasn't training. Tatilla, with a hand on the boy's shoulder, whose face was already sweating from tension. She replied that they were settling boutique matters, but now he was free. When Will ran out, slamming the door, Andrew noticed he looked at his wife like a loyal puppy, as if she were the owner, not him. The Archduke left before it got dark, and Tatilla grabbed his arm, trying to stop him. The boy sharply pulled back his hand, accidentally pushing the girl to the floor. 885. He asked her to avoid touching him unnecessarily, and Tatilla apologized. It didn't matter, she would have another chance. In the 3rd district, on Buris Commercial Street, the Archduke and Archduchess walked amidst the cheerful comments of passers-by. At one point, the girl heard someone insinuate that it was all a sham because, according to rumors, not everything was going so well between them. She looked around, but there was no one nearby. To Tatilla's surprise, her husband took her hand and suggested they keep walking. He thought that the more people saw them together, the better the opinion people would have of them. This way, they would also attract more attention, which suited them perfectly. The reaction of the passers-by was not long in coming. 2 girls ran towards the couple. The last time they saw the Duke was at the masked ball, and they wanted to know what he was doing there. Tatilla explained that her husband is usually busy with his duties at the palace, so today they had time, and decided to have a date. The girls squealed with joy, but they regretted that the middle of the street was closed on such a beautiful day. An aristocrat paid a fortune to all the boutiques in the 1st district and rented that part of the street for a day. They said he organized everything for his beloved. A limitless love. Now the girls decided to find out when the spouses planned to have children. They believed that if such a beautiful couple had a child, it would be wonderful. The emperor is not married yet, and if they had an heir, he would become crown prince. Tatilla wrapped her arms around her husband's shoulders, telling the girls that for now they wanted to spend more time alone. Andrew let out a nervous chuckle, as if uncomfortable. But it was too late. Children were useless. He himself planned to take the throne after murdering Aster. Then he planned to divorce and get back with her. Karina, who was just approaching the couple, Tatilla was not at all happy with the encounter, and Andrew somewhat confused, having no idea about the princess's business. It was ironic that, being related to the emperor, they were unaware that today he was meeting His Majesty in the 1st district. Tatilla, who had barely contained herself, shouted that it was a lie. After releasing her emotions, the young woman finally realized her mistake. Titi wouldn't allow Karina to be with the man she couldn't have. Someone like her couldn't date the emperor. Andrew knew how to cover it up, saying that the Duchess and the princess were old friends. Moreover, now Tatilla was part of the imperial family, and the Duchess not knowing about her date with His Majesty surely hurt her a lot. Titi confirmed her joy for her inseparable friend's romance with the emperor, but for a moment she thought it was fake. She got a little annoyed, and that's why it slipped out. Of course, Karina found the show amusing. She didn't have to explain anything, and she was late. So she bylayed. The girl moved forward, but Titi stopped her so they could go together. Drama. They were family, but the emperor was so busy they didn't see each other. The Duchess wanted to greet him. Karina found the whole thing stressful, but replied that the girl was free to do whatever she wanted. As they walked, Titi analyzed the princess. She was pretty, yes, but cold and boring. How bland. She didn't understand why the emperor was dating that simpleton. She was much better. Andrew, who knew his wife, knew she was plotting something murky. Careful. They finally reached the emperor. Karina greeted him with a touch of the hand. Formalities. He wasn't as happy to see the others, of course. What tension. They curtsied and greeted His Majesty. Scene end. Deciding not to interrupt the spouse's date, Aster said goodbye, but Titi stopped him. Rubbing a bead, the girl began to recount that since childhood she and the princess studied at the academy. And they were close friends, with no secrets. But since the beginning of her relationship, many mysteries had appeared between them. Starting to cry, Tasha continued by saying that if they hadn't crossed paths by chance, she would never have known about her relationship. So it seemed to her that His Majesty was snatching her friend away. The emperor, who thought it was a great opportunity for her to become more independent. He was kind but unyielding. Being adults, knowing every step of a friend would be abnormal. The girl hesitated a little, but immediately, grabbing Aster's sleeve, she suggested they all gather and have lunch together. First, contact had to be established with the emperor. Karina's presence was extremely unpleasant, but this way the emperor could see the difference between them and understand that the Duchess was better than that woman. Tasha added that family harmony was very important. When the emperor understood this postulate, his choice would fall on her, and he wouldn't even notice Karina's sudden disappearance. If both Andrew and Aster fell in love with her, she wouldn't even know which one to make emperor. The surrounding space filled with Aster's loud laughter. Family harmony was an incredibly ridiculous concept for him in these realities. Andrew immediately started apologizing, but there was nothing to apologize for. They had amused him so much that there was no reason to feel guilty. Before getting involved in her friend's relationship, Tati should pay more attention to her family. If the Duke had told her more about his childhood, his wife wouldn't think those things. For example, about what the deceased father did to the emperor, or about the second prince, killed by betrayal. He could also have told her about the day known as the Prince's Rebellion. Andrew said he would inform the Duchess about it. And finally, they said goodbye. The emperor apologized for making the princess wait so long. They exchanged only a few words, but it was clear to him that Tati was a disgusting woman. Although Aster didn't understand how men fell for her hypocrisy, Karina was glad he didn't defend her. It would be very much like Tati to use the bracelet with the emperor too. But for some reason, he remained indifferent. Andrew found it funny that she asked him to trust her, but it was the only thing he could show her. Even with the bracelet, she said it was just training, but she was biting her finger. That had never happened. A game window appeared before Aster, indicating that he could not conquer that objective. The emperor rented the entire block in Baris to see her home outfit, but there were too many people. And it was dangerous. Karina knew that renting an entire block was difficult, and she probably hid her identity. Would it be easier to bring the outfit to the palace? Of course, she was right, but Aster wanted a date with her. After the masked ball, it would take time to see each other. He thought that perhaps he was overwhelming her, but Karina was grateful for a break from so much stress. Aster was acting strange, as if he resented the princess. How great it would be to get inside his head and know what he thinks. The couple arrived at the door of a workshop called Boutique de Masse. The man who received them inside was kneeling with his hands on the floor, serving the guests. He planned to fleece those rich folks. You could smell their money from a kilometer away. He was going to leave them trembling. 10 outfits were waiting for them, made to measure. They just had to choose the most spectacular ones. Aster was amazed. A princess doesn't need an outfit to hunt. At the ball, she accepted her prey. But the girl, secretly, also sent her measurements. She wanted to participate in the hunt. And it's that the princess was an expert at leaving the emperor wide-mouthed. Karina wanted to meet Allison at the hunt, but Aster would have stopped her. Better to laugh nervously. But the pretense couldn't last. She started winking at the employee, asking for urgent help. Aster insisted on getting information out of her, but the workshop owner interrupted. The outfits are waiting. Chat for later. Before the emperor returned, she had to invent a good excuse. His Majesty might think she's hiding something, but she never asks for help or trusts anyone. She acted on her own during the fire, although without Andrew her end would have been imminent. Karina didn't tell him about her joint work with Raymond on the perfume boutique, nor did she mention the plans to open a hospital. His Majesty always extended a hand to her without asking. In fact, that she brought Andrew and Tatilla today was also a surprise to him. Seen this way, it could really seem like she is a heartless lover. By then, Aster had already changed and appeared before the girl, so she could see how the suit looked on him. Karina gave him a sincere compliment, and the emperor was happy that she liked it. Now only the other 9 outfits remained to be tried on. Of course, the princess would like to see it, but by the time he tried them all on, the sun would have already set. The only solution in this situation was to buy all the outfits and then send someone to pick them up. Karina told Aster that they hadn't had a date in a long time, and she would like to stroll and converse with him. On the street, the girl shouted with all her might, full of joy. She had always wanted to do that, at least once, to shout in the middle of the city. It had been so long since the couple could stroll peacefully, without worrying about others. And now it was all thanks to the emperor. However, he thought it was thanks to the princess making room in his tight schedule. From that moment, the girl felt the need to be more honest with him. She took Aster's hand, and if he didn't object, proposed telling him a story from her past. That happened when she was in her 3rd year at the academy. Back then, she and Tatilla had agreed to do their graduation project together. But her friend only informed her now that she was already in another team. If she had told her earlier, Karina could have found another team, since not completing the group project meant graduating a year later. Titi asked her to understand her as well. Daniel had been on her team since last year, and Raymond said he refused to work without her. But unfortunately, the assignment couldn't be done by 4 people. So Daniel proposed leaving the team and working with Karina, but she refused, preferring to manage on her own. Honestly, the situation was familiar to her. For 3 years at the academy, she always ended up alone. She knew perfectly well that she was too trusting, but for some reason, even knowing that, she was always deceived. After Karina's confrontation with Andrew, the professor called them to discuss the final project. To graduate, they needed a group project, and only their names were missing from the group list. They could team up, and the professor would include them on the list, and Andrew was happy with this proposal. But Karina insisted that she wanted to do the project alone. She didn't care if their grade dropped, she just wanted to graduate. Seeing that Andrew, the new boy, hesitated about whether he wanted to do the project alone, the professor gave them a week to discuss it. He added that it would be easier for Karina to do the project in a pair than alone, and thus avoid the penalty, and he said goodbye until the next class. Andrew asked her if the princess wouldn't want to do the project together. He was new and hadn't made friends yet. Apparently, Andrew Lobron transferred late because of a big mess. Trying something with a girl would only bring rumors. Karina repeated that she would do the final project alone, so he should look for another team. And she left without letting him reply. Instantly, other female students surrounded him, saying Karina was rude, and that talking to her only soured the day. They said he should join them instead of wasting energy on that girl. Although thinking about it, Karina did him a favor. Every time she appeared among the students, it was a new scandal. Everyone criticized her behind her back without knowing anything about her. They insisted she had low self-esteem and called her rude. But if she were so horrible, she wouldn't put up with so many insults for nothing. At first the gossip hurt her, but now she didn't care. In the end, it was a game where everything is made for the protagonists. A fake world, tears are useless, and crying or getting angry was pointless. So, alone among the trees, Karina took a bite of her sandwich. Let her beloved leave her. Let her friends ignore her. Let them accuse her of what she didn't do. She doesn't care. While she was devouring her lunch, the girl heard someone approaching. It was Andrew, who seemed to believe there was absolutely no one around. The girl told him she was almost done, so he could stay without a problem. Seeing that she had barely bitten the sandwich, the newcomer wanted to leave quickly, but still suggested eating together. Anyway, no one would see them there, so the girl didn't care at all. The silence while eating was quite uncomfortable, so Karina asked how Andrew was doing with the final project team. Even though the princess thought he had joined Sophie and Ruby, the boy was still alone. And he had refused to form a team with them. He didn't want to deal with people who speak ill of someone without knowing anything. And that made Karina a little uncomfortable. He also revealed to her that the labels are on the sandwiches under the wrapper. And from that day on, the girl lunched with Andrew. Little by little, they started spending more time together. And even though his family was of a much lower status, she didn't care at all. In reality, his low social status meant he wouldn't be a main character, and the situation suited Karina perfectly. With Andrew, she felt comfortable, even in silence, but they could talk about absolutely anything. In the hardest moments, only he was on her side. Only with him she wasn't the protagonist's friend, but herself. Autumn arrived, one semester remained until graduation. But thanks to Andrew, the last year at the academy was filled with pleasant memories. People commented on Karina's relationship with him and their social status, but she cared neither about the hatred nor the insults directed at her. It's not that she didn't worry at all. She simply endured it. But it hurt her that Andrew was also humiliated because of her. The moment the girl shouted at the gossips, a man approached her. In his hands, he held a letter, sent from the duchy of the pioneer family. After taking a look at the text, Karina was horrified. Disaster came from where she least expected it. Andrew, happy to see his beloved, instantly changed his expression upon seeing her cry. The letter said her mother had disappeared, a year and a half after her parents' divorce. After the divorce, her mother didn't have a fixed home, moving constantly for her research. And in one of them, she disappeared without a trace in the mountains. Now Karina remembered that period calmly, knowing she returned safe and sound. But then she felt her world collapsing. She was afraid her mother wouldn't return, fear that her loved ones would leave just like that, one after another, and in the end, she would be left completely alone. Karina didn't understand why everyone abandoned her. Perhaps she simply shouldn't have been born, and Andrew couldn't believe she said that. Sometimes, the girl imagined a world where she was the protagonist, with true friends by her side, a man who loved her sincerely. No one looks down on her, but rather values her for her actions. A world without unexpected tragedies, where every day is happy and loved. That is the life of a protagonist. At that instant, Andrew approached the girl from behind and hugged her, as tears slid down her cheeks. He promised he would make her world like that. He would always be by her side. He would never change. And he would love her forever. How sweet Andrew's confession sounded then. But just as strongly, restlessness grew in Karina's soul, as she didn't know if she could trust him. She wanted him to get along with the other boys, but she also wanted to be by his side. She burned with the desire to believe him and loved him, but she feared he would also abandon her, although those thoughts served no purpose. In any case, Karina, being a side character, could do nothing. It was better not to think about anything. One random day, they ran into Tasha. The girl suggested going to a new cafe together with her and Daniel, but Karina had other plans. Tati understood that her plans were Andrew, so she simply said goodbye, assuming there was nothing to be done. Insults could be heard, directed towards the boy from those around them. The students considered him a freeloader and didn't understand why they were together. It seemed to Karina that Tatilla was looking at Andrew with too much attention, as if plotting to take the boy away from her again. In the original work, he didn't even exist. Everything should go well. Andrew was irrelevant to the protagonist. It would be enough not to cross paths anymore. By intervening in the fight, Karina warned him that she wouldn't help. You can't silence everyone. In any case, it was just rumors. It was enough for them to know the truth. Andrew just wanted to ask them to stop talking like that, but she said that the intervention of a mere viscount wouldn't change anything, if not even her word. As a princess, it was enough. If it were something simple she could solve with words, everything would be different. She could keep pretending to be the hero, but in reality, they were both extras. For some reason she didn't understand, she kept saying things that hurt him, although she didn't think that way. If he weren't a mere viscount, but the crown prince himself, perhaps things would be different. From that day on, Andrew started spending a lot of time alone. Sometime later, he confessed that, in reality, he liked Tatilla. He who swore never to abandon her, ended up leaving her completely alone. It was then that Karina understood that eternal love did not exist. Therefore, she basically stopped believing in something called love. She thought His Majesty proposed to her not out of love, but for political ambitions. But he was always kind and supported her, so she wanted to repay him. Of course, now telling him everything would be difficult, but she almost executed Tasha's revenge plan. Karina took Aster's hand, allowing him to use hers too, building an honest relationship. And mutually beneficial, full of determination, she proposed marriage to the boy. He already had the greatest military and political power in the empire, but due to the terrors at the beginning of his path, his approval rating among citizens was quite low. Therefore, the boy needed the support of the aristocracy. To solve this, he could influence high society using Karina's family position. Therefore, Karina was ready to give an affirmative answer to the proposal he made during their first encounter. However, the emperor's face did not reflect absolute jubilation. Disappointed, he let go of the girl's hand. Aster didn't understand if she truly believed they had met that day. That phrase became an enigma for Karina, but he wasn't going to explain its meaning. If you think about it, hearing that proposal on the first day was strange, and his words truly impacted her. Of course, it was a surprise for her, especially since she was drunk that day, and she behaved indecently, but he helped her anyway. Apparently, she had really overdone it with the alcohol and wasn't in her right mind. Aster truly considered the princess a very good, intelligent, and interesting woman. Nevertheless, he rejected the marriage proposal. Karina didn't understand why, since it was his proposal. Aster explained that they didn't know each other well yet, so they shouldn't rush, but they could decide later. The conversation ended there, and the girl didn't know what else to say to him. Going to the royal hunt in a carriage with the emperor, she thought about the previous conversation. Her social standing hadn't changed since he proposed marriage. Now Karina wasn't sure if her initial initiative was for political reasons. Maybe the recent encounter with Tasha did influence Aster, and he was like all men. Finally, the boy broke the silence. Handing a gift box to the princess, he hoped she would wear it to the home festival. Inside was an incredibly beautiful butterfly-shaped brooch. Due to the awkwardness, Karina was afraid to even look Aster in the eye. But if he had given her a gift, maybe everything was fine. The girl still didn't understand. For God's sake, what was he thinking? With this mix of emotions, the day of the home festival arrived. Lily was anxious for the event. They said the imperial forest was incredibly beautiful, but Karina had already been there once. A long time ago. It was almost impossible to enter there, outside of the hunting festival. But thanks to the princess, the maid could finally see the forest with her own eyes. In the end, Karina, although she didn't want to become like Tasha, put on the bracelet to see the protagonist's future. The girl decided to find out how interesting it was for Aster, and would take it off immediately. Lily asked if something was troubling her mistress. Since her date with His Majesty, she hadn't been herself. Karina pretended everything was fine. Soon their boutique would open. The weather was good, and the day of the home festival was approaching. It couldn't be better. She asked the girl not to worry about her. Although the princess didn't know why Aster rejected her that day, she had other important matters to resolve. Finally, the girls arrived at the meeting point, at the entrance to the imperial forest. His Imperial Majesty was about to inaugurate the event, and everyone had to be present. Amidst cheers, the emperor came out to greet the people to declare the start of the hunt. Upon seeing the jewel he was wearing, Karina was slightly stunned. Aster was wearing the exact same brooch that she had given him. The moment their gazes met, the young woman understood the meaning of the brooch. Lily claimed it was a sign, a symbol of their love and their blossoming relationship. In a way, it was an announcement. He was showing everyone that they were together. The emperor was sincerely happy for the opportunity to be with everyone in this legendary land. This forest, called the Golden Forest, according to legends, is the birthplace of the creator god of their world. This forest is a unique territory where it is impossible to use magic, as the purest magic gems here absorb magical powers. Thus, everyone can demonstrate their true abilities, which is what the imperial hunt is all about. After today's celebration for the festival opening, the competitions had to begin. The first day for knights, the second for ladies, and the third a feast. The emperor wished everything would go well, and wished the participants excellent results. While Lily took the suitcases to their tent, Karina decided to look for where the doctor's tent was. She had an important matter to resolve during this festival. Meeting Allison, Tasha's doctor, and convincing her to join her. On a nearby flag was the Archduke's coat of arms. Of course, such a noble family could not miss the imperial hunt. After the wedding, Andrew and Tasha provided staff from their estate for every official imperial event, as if they wanted to curb the emperor's growing power. So it was easy to assume that they would also provide medical staff for the home festival. Looking for the field hospital, Karina pretended to feel unwell to receive help from a doctor. Since the only doctor present was the Duchess's doctor, Lady Allison, the attendant offered the young woman a painkiller, although she was hoping for a consultation with the doctor. Now it was impossible to get her consultation, unless she needed urgent help. But a doctor could examine the participant. As Karina thought, it wouldn't be easy to meet Allison. At least, she knew the woman was there. To see her without seeming intense, she would have to get injured in the competition. Raymond appeared at the festival, with an air of fatigue he couldn't hide. Thanks to Karina, he had no rest. She ordered him to finish the product before the Imperial Hunt. Judging by his energetic gestures, his health was good. She checked everything yesterday. Only his promise remained, to present Karina with prey during the Imperial Hunt. Raymond remembered it well. After the hunt, this absurd contract would come to an end. She doubted his skills, but if he wanted to end the agreement, he would have to try hard. Raymond exploded and furiously shouted that he hated the girl. He definitely hated her. In the medical tent, Allison asked if Tasha was sure about participating, with her recent headaches. The Archduke expected this. She didn't want to worry him over a simple headache. Allison begged the Duchess to notify her instantly if she felt unwell. She would be ready at all times. As soon as Titi left the tent, Wilhelm was already there, asking about her health. As soon as he finished his duties, he ran, scared to learn she missed the opening. The girl was not at all happy with that encounter, and hoped the boy had come with Andrew. The Archduke said he had more duties to attend to, so he would join later. He thought that Wilhelm was so looking forward to the Imperial Hunt that he looked like a child promised a picnic, as if he wanted to leave his post and play with toy soldiers. Now the boy noticed that something was wrong with Titi. Nearby, he saw Raymond next to Karina. He hadn't expected to see his beloved at the event. She took him by the arm, telling him they needed to talk. The young couple entered the Archduke's tent, and Will, annoyed by Tati's new attention, tried to figure out what they were doing inside. The girl wasn't sure if she could use Raymond's ring, as it was rumored that magic didn't work in the Golden Forest. It is true that the Golden Forest sucked the magical powers out of people, but it couldn't block artifacts made with magic stones. In that case, if she used the ring to kill Karina, it would be the perfect crime. Upon hearing those words from Tati, Raymond asked her to return that ring. He suggested taking care of it himself, as it was dangerous for a girl to do something like that alone. Tati didn't understand if Raymond also thought her foolish. He promised to help her. Then he disappeared. He didn't include her in his plans, and now he wanted to take back the ring he gave her. Raymond shouted that he had tried his best just for her, and that he had associated with Karina from the beginning to get closer to her. Seeing the level of the boy's sympathy, Tati assumed the problem was his feelings, that they vanished so easily if they were apart for a while. Clutching the bracelet, the girl cried, declaring that he too would abandon her in the end. Raymond swore that he was always sincere with her and would do anything for her happiness. And immediately, her sympathy level began to rise. In that case, Tasha begged him to help her, as she would only be happy if Karina disappeared. The boy took her hands. Since he saw Tati's tears, she was the owner of his heart. But he couldn't allow it, so, begging her forgiveness, he snatched the ring from her. The men gathered at the starting point of the hunt. At the entrance to the Golden Forest, Karina looked for Aster in the crowd, but couldn't find him, and wanted to talk to him. Yesterday a crowd surrounded her, and she couldn't talk to him. Before, they avoided her. Was the original plot weakening? Finally, their eyes met, and Aster asked her why the princess was there so early. She couldn't greet him properly yesterday, so she decided to see him before the men's competition started. It was nothing compared to the brooch, but she cultivated a flower with magic and gave it to Aster, with a spell so it wouldn't wilt. She feared it was a mediocre gift. She has little magic and little talent, but it was enough. The emperor was truly happy. Karina had achieved an excellent result. That flower was perfect. Blushing, she noticed that the boy was also wearing the matching brooch today. Aster forgot to mention, when both wear the brooches, he instantly knows if something is happening to the girl. So if she is in danger, he will always help her. Thanks to this, Karina could worry about nothing and simply enjoy the festival. The night before, Raymond took the ring from Tasha and threw it far away. The girl, not willing to give what was hers to anyone, ran after the jewel, and she almost caught it. At that moment, she found herself at the feet of her husband, Andrew Lovron Gloucester. He didn't know how to understand his wife, running after a ring given by another man. Like a dog, Tasha justified herself by saying she was very greedy. Raymond gave her the ring and then took it off himself. That's why she got angry. Then, Andrew declared that instead of that trinket, he would buy her hundreds of others with bigger diamonds, and that he would step on that one and break it. The girl shouted for him to stop, covering the object with her hands. For the Archduke, this was nothing new, so he couldn't even get angry. He was only surprised by how much his wife valued a ring given by another man. It could really hurt feelings she didn't even have for him. If she planned to keep behaving so vulgarly, it would be best to divorce. Unable to bear such pressure, Tatilla confessed that it was an artifact, 1165, which was not an ordinary ring, but an extremely valuable jewel with a magic stone. With it, even in the Golden Forest, it was possible to use magic to alter the mind. Tatilla finally had to say that, with the ring, she planned to get rid of Karina. Then, learning about the jewel's magical properties, Andrew confiscated it from his wife. Before the hunt, he put it on without a single drop of doubt. Perhaps her dream was about to come true sooner than she thought. The royal hunt has begun, and the men rush to the front to test their skills. Andrew was the first to kill his prey. His Majesty arrived a fraction of a second late. A moment later, a bullet was already whistling near the Archduke's ear. This time he hesitated, and the prey went to the Emperor. It was already getting dark in the area. After taking down a good number of creatures, they were walking together in the same direction. The boys stopped at the edge of a cliff, and Astor noticed that today he felt something strange. He didn't know if it was something new or familiar, but as soon as they met, Andrew's face twisted in terror. However, today he looked at the Emperor, just like the deceased second prince, who coveted his position. Astor aimed his rifle at the Archduke's head, but he didn't even flinch. Activating the ring, Andrew stated that this place never belonged to his brother. If they hadn't murdered his father, he would never have gotten the throne. The Emperor doubted whether he understood the magnitude of his words, and the Duke corrected himself. If Astor hadn't killed his father, he would be the heir, and his brother would be kneeling before him. The young man instantly fell to his knees, dropping the rifle from his hands. He was incapable of controlling his body, as if it were made of stone or foreign. Everything around him was moving, and the Emperor understood that Andrew had used an artifact to alter consciousness. The Duke was glad that he finally showed his true face, the face of a murderer. The death of his mother, right after he was born, was not enough for him. He also stole the lives of his father and brothers. Bloody Emperor was too grand a nickname. Andrew considered him a mere murderer, stained with blood from birth. That's why both the imperial throne and Karina belonged to him from the start. Taking advantage of his position, the young man pushed his brother off the cliff to reclaim everything that, according to him, belonged to him by right. He crushed the flower Karina had given him. Then he said goodbye to Astor, sending him straight to hell.